Wait, Zach, is this our
Well,
first DragonCast of the season together?
Well, it's my only one of the season, so yeah.
It's my only one of the season as well.
We did it, Paul.
Yeah! We sound the same.
Perfect.
Which one of you said that?
Adam, you and I were typing at each other, and I was just like, why? Why?
Yeah. I was like, they're not about to do this. Oh, God, they're doing it.
I cannot give you back your homes or restore your dead to life, but perhaps I can give you justice in the name of our king.
Hello and welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave. Today we're discussing Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 5. I sound super excited right now, but I'm not. It's called The Bells, and it's written by David and Dan. I don't really care about their last names anymore, and obviously spoilers for all aired shows of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire book series. Today I am joined by...
I'm Michal, inkasrain on the podcast of Ice and Fire forums.
This is Adam, drownedsnow on the forums.
This is Matt, Varley on the forums.
Matt, number 2, blue armor.
This is Katie, Lady Griffin on the forums.
This is Paul, Serdinnerroll on the forums.
This is Zach, also known as Alias on the forums. Glad to be back on DragonCast after like 3 years.
And then I'm, of course, Casey, Blue-Eyed Queen on the forums. Of course, we're going to do lemon cakes first. Michal, how about you first?
I don't know. I mean, for acting, I'll give it a 5. I'll say that. I think everybody crushed it. Unfortunately, what they were doing was not, I think, quite as worthy of their talent. A 2, 2.5. I don't know. There were parts that I was fine with, and then there were parts that were just like, I feel like I'm so, like I've had to like disconnect my emotions. So I'm just kind of like, yeah, I guess that I didn't really like that, but like I can't let myself feel it because it's been 9 years of this, and the feelings would be too intense. So yeah, let's say 2.
Adam.
All right. Well, I have completely slipped into learned helplessness and have lowered my expectations for years. You all know this. I'll give this a 4, kind of a begrudging 4, because it is an amazing episode of TV. Everything that went on the screen. I would have maybe given this a 5 if she had just gone straight to the Red Keep instead. Even though that wouldn't make entirely sense, it would make a little more sense. Cleganebowl, I loved it. Tyrion just keeps being the worst. I mean, everything that I hate about this episode is stuff that they've been doing this season and last season. So I guess I'm not really I don't know. I don't know how much I can criticize them for doing the same shit they've been doing for 2 years.
Matt, you're next. Or I'm sorry, Varley, you're next.
So I gave this a 2 today on the forums, and I'll stick by that. Good things. Visually, it was stunning. Cleganebowl was nice. That's about it. I feel like they continue to just connect dots as randomly as they can to check things off their list, and that character arcs that they developed for 8 seasons have just gone by the wayside. Storylines, and the spider that heads out of the darkness gets the Kleenex and gets thrown in the bin, I guess.
Other Matt? Sorry, Matt. Real Matt?
You're right. Yeah, no, I just pressed the wrong button.
Blue Matt.
I think it's right. Yeah, that's what you want. I think a 3 is a solid grade for the episode, mainly because Dany finally won the battle that should have been fought in episode 2 of season 7. It pretty much would have been about the same teams on each side, same odds. And Cleganebowl was hype. I really like that. And even just kind of visuals of it, them throwing into the fire, as well as him just cutting through the other nameless Kingsguard soldiers, like he was Barristan. It was pretty sweet. And there were two really good scenes that I liked, which was right before that, the scene between the Hound and Arya, as well as the final scene between Jaime and Tyrion. But, we'll discuss, obviously, the Mad Queen just wasn't earned, and they're doing the one thing that we said at the beginning of the series they can't do, and that's throwing out Daenerys for Jon's claim. And, I mean, they have to kill her now. It's the only way to finish it off, so it's just kind of inevitable at this point, and that's disappointing. But up until that point, it was a fun episode.
Katie.
I'll give it a 3. It's a gorgeous episode. It's an amazingly well-acted episode. There's nothing that happens that in this episode that I'm not okay with in theory. I'm okay with characters failing their arcs. I'm okay with Dany burning King's Landing. I'm okay with her being a dark messiah. But if I can't tell what your character's motivation is when she's about to kill millions of people, that's a problem in a big way. And the fact that this has come so fast within the span of a season and just feels thematically confused with what they've given us in the show. Like, I understand that Dany is a violent imperialist. I understand that she's a narcissist and that she's all about her self-aggrandizement. But you gotta give me something better than she's just crazy now, because it just feels depressingly misogynistic, especially when it's angling to, knock her down to put a man in her place. It just feels gross in all the ways that I've like problems that I've had with the show for the years. It's just like they stuck needles into all the right nerves in my body, and I was just like, oh, I just don't like this. I don't like it on any level. In the hands of more competent writers, it could have been really interesting. And the idea that, like, way back in season 2, that, in the House of the Undying, that she sees a vision of the Iron Throne covered in ash, and that she's seeing a prophecy of her destroying the thing that she wants more than anything. That's powerful if they had earned it, which they didn't. So I'll hit, there are good things about this episode, and then the big terrible thing knocks it down to a 3 for me.
Paul.
I'm gonna split my lemon cake between production, 5 out of 5. I mean, it's HBO. They can get some of the best involved, excellent actors involved. Just the CGI of just the dragon always looks spectacular. So 5 out of 5 for them. Story-wise, I'm going with a 2. It was just unsatisfying. I think I've tweeted out before, but it feels like this whole season just goes with the sound of an air balloon just deflating slowly. I hear a lot of people saying about how cool Cleganebowl was, but I just felt it was kind of just gratuitous at this point. It wasn't really as exciting as I initially might have thought that Cleganebowl would be. Dany going mad, if that does happen in the books, no doubt George will probably actually give good reasons for her going mad. But in this, it was fucking stupid, man. Terrible job with that. I don't know what the whole point of Arya being in King's Landing was, I guess. She just was there to witness the carnage or something. And what was the point for even including Jamie in the season at all? His story was going to be he learns nothing and then fucking dies. But yeah, bad writing.
Yeah, Zach.
So I have a really hard time rating the show kind of because of what Paul is getting at, because in some ways it really excels and in others it falls short. I feel like in terms of having compelling characters and meaningful themes, the show has been lacking for a long time. But in terms of quality acting, directing, editing, sounds, etc., it's very, very good. So I'm just going to be boring and give this episode a 3. There were a lot of scenes I really liked, but the show just doesn't inspire a lot of feeling in me anymore. So we'll, I'm sure, get into at great length on Dany, but I was actually pretty happy with how they were handling that storyline up to this point, but I felt they missed the mark here, which we'll get to, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I on the forums I gave this a 1, and I think that's the first 1 I've ever given. And it's tough because, as a lot of you have mentioned, visually wise and I guess like destruction porn wise, like it's very successful and it's visually like very well done. But when it comes to the storylines, it just feels like they've kind of just gone for the shock factor of everything rather than like, developing the characters and having like little bits of foreshadowing and developing the characters into whatever they're supposed to become, which I know is something that we would get by reading a book. But I feel like they just wanted to go, surprise, you didn't think that Dany was going to blow up everything, but here she is blowing up everything. And it was just, it's so disappointing to like, Dany, Sansa's my favorite character, but Dany was probably my second favorite character. And like to see that happen to like a character that you've loved for that long just like crushed me. And I was very upset during most of the episode. And to the point where like I'm having a tough time even talking about this episode, which sounds like so like dumb, but it really upset me. So yeah, that's where I'm at. But I'm happy to talk about it with you guys. So
no, I mean, I think part of the reason we're here is for therapy, like, and yeah, I feel like most DragonCast reviews at least are at least part therapy.
And how does that make you feel?
Oh my God, stereotype much?
I'm just saying, is it not made worse because of what they were able to do in the earlier seasons when they had the
source
whole broad
material
script to go off? Well, with source material, but I mean, they had the source material to keep the plotting in line. But what they did with actual character development, those early seasons, stuff that we got that was not in the books, they actually fleshed out.
How could I forget? Roz was such an integral part of our lives.
Well,
Yeah.
so obviously Roz.
Well, stuff they did with Tywin, like.
Yeah. And a lot of they created a lot of scenes that were not in the books that were excellent, and we don't have to like fully relitigate at this point on where what's good and what's bad about the totality of Game of Thrones. But I think when you get right down to the final analysis of it, it's just that they tried to do things that necessarily were going to need to take longer, and they tried to compact it into these shorter seasons, and it just didn't work. Like there's a certain effect where like just having time to build up the tension and build up the stakes is going to make all these payoffs moments feel so much more important, and we just don't have that.
Remember when they brought in Maggie the Frog and thought maybe that would be like the impetus between like for some of Cersei's actions, and it never was, and it never turned out to be really anything.
I mean, I'm sorry. Cersei is like a very good example of how they were able to, like, they're really able to just flesh out a character and not have, Cersei doesn't have a POV in the first 3 books. And they're able to make her into a believable, loved even sometimes, because a lot of people like cared about her as like a mother in like a motherly point of view, kind of state. And like, that's good on the show for doing that we didn't really see in the books. But
yeah, there's like that
I know that
power
they're
is
capable
power
of
scene. That scene we get with Cersei early on with Littlefinger, and some people don't like that scene because they think it's out of character for Littlefinger, but that scene is so good for fleshing out Cersei's worldview and just understanding the ways that she interacts with the world and believes that she is born into this position and she can utilize that to her own ends.
But did anyone find themselves yelling at the TV like I was? I was like, when she's like, I don't want to die, I was like, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll get there. Yeah. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like this would have been a good episode to like live watch together, because I was yelling at the TV and my wife a lot, and she was like, "What's going on?" And I'm trying to like, I don't have time to explain it.
Yeah,
I just need someone to listen to me.
Yeah, Adam, you and I were typing at each other, and I was just like, why? Why?
Yeah. I was like, they're not about to do this. Oh God, they're doing it. I think I made a joke at one point, and I was like, I bet the whole city burns down now. And 5 minutes later, it's happening. I'm like, wait, no, that was a joke.
Ugh.
Yeah, I got to watch it with some friends. It was nice to have some people to complain with.
Yeah, my wife doesn't care. She's just like, shut up, idiot.
Well, my wife, I learned that she didn't realize the incest involved in the show. Like, she knew Jamie and Cersei, and I discovered that they were twins when I explained that to her yesterday. But then she's like, well, why aren't Jon and Dany just getting together? And I'm like explaining how he's her aunt and all that, and she's like, what the fuck is with this show?
All right.
All right, so let's go to the first scene, or first couple scenes in here. So we're on Dragonstone. Jon arrives. We find that Dany is not taking any food. This eventually leads to some discussions between Dany and Tyrion, and with Jon, kind of confirming that, like, they know about Varys, which leads to Varys being killed. And so I know that's a large chunk, but
guys, how did they get back to Dragonstone with the Iron Fleet right there? And then fucking
are we really
Jon shows
concerned
up.
with logistics?
Yes, I kind of am, because it just makes no goddamn fucking sense to me. It hurts my brain to think about it. Wasn't Jon supposed to be marching down, and they caught a TARDIS over to Dragonstone? Like, it just
they
doesn't...
get there somehow.
Yeah.
Well, they killed Littlefinger so they could use his TARDIS.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, we cannot talk about how people get to locations in this show. We are 8 seasons in.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to do this in under 2 hours if we can go down there.
I will just say one thing on that point, that when the scene first happened where he's talking to like one of his little kids and he's talking about spying on the queen, I thought that they were outside King's Landing somewhere and it was Cersei that was being spied on at first, and then I realized kind of the implications of that later. I was like, oh, they're in Dragonstone.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Didn't realize it.
And Varys too smart for that. What the fuck is he doing? Like, shouldn't he have just slipped out and, like, stayed outside King's Landing, or done whatever he
disguised himself?
So Varys definitely
should have. And stuff.
He definitely should have fled. I have confidence in Varys that he could figure out a way out. Shout out to the epic look on his face in the end of season 4 when he's like, "God damn it, Tyrion!" when sitting next to the box that Tyrion's in on the boat. Good stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's also worth noting. Sarah in one of the chats was saying that there's like some connection between the girl that he's talking to and food and a big risk. And watch this be absolutely nothing, but I did think it was an interesting idea to be like, well, maybe he was planning on poisoning Dany, and maybe that plot is still in motion. But yes, I agree he should not have been doing that from Dragonstone, although I think that I can rationalize it in my head with him being like, well, Melisandre said she was going to die here, and she totally did. She told me I was going to die here, and I'm deliberately committing treason, so why even just...
But that's not his first time doing it,
No, he's an old hand at treason. But
yes, and it is the end of the show.
Yeah, but
yeah, he knows there's only 2 episodes left.
One question before I want to talk about the scene, but he takes off his ring before they come to arrest him?
Yeah, 2 rings he took off for some reason.
All right, nobody has an answer for what that means.
Maybe it's one of those decoder rings for Little Orphan Annie.
Maybe he just didn't want them to burn. I don't know.
Or they have poison or something. I don't know. I did find, Dinklage, I think, is finally given some vulnerability after many seasons of not being vulnerable. He does pretty well in this episode, and I found it actually really touching, the level of devotion he has for Dany in their scenes where she is clearly not okay, but he is fully committed to her, to the point that he is going to send Varys to his death. I actually really bought that, he is making a deep and personal sacrifice based on a belief that feels genuine and real. That actually that worked for me on an emotional level.
But then he believes in her so hard that he frees her brother. Like, it doesn't make any sense, his actions in this entire in this entire episode. Like, the purpose of pointing out Varys was so he wouldn't get eaten by the dragon. Because someone knew, like everyone knew that someone told.
He had to make a choice, either his queen or his friend. And I think Dinklage said something like, like, well, him and Varys are best buddies, but not really. Like they're not that close enough that he would do that for him, but he feels bad about it.
I think Dinklage is good enough in this, and I agree, Katie. Like, this is the first time in a while that I've been like, oh, right, this is why he won an Emmy. I don't think the character is 100% consistent, but I can see what they're going for in that kind of like, everybody's kind of hitting the end of their, like the utmost extreme of kind of what they want, right? So Tyrion is like hitting that like black hole of love in his life that's like defined him, and he's decided to fill it with Dany. Okay, so I think what he's doing is like he can't turn back. Like, I think multiple times in the past, I mean, in the whole season, he's just been like, he's even tried to argue with her, about the Tarleys and blah, blah, blah. And like, it hasn't worked. So he's just kind of finding another way without sacrificing the fact that he is utterly devoted to her. And I agree, it's not logical. And for like the guy who's supposed to be the smartest character in the series, probably would have liked something else, and also some more backup to like exactly why he feels so devoted to her. But I think that that's why he's acting in this way. And to me, it's like, it's compelling to see somebody caught between, I can't believe I'm starting praising this episode, but here we are. It's very compelling to see somebody caught between two things that he almost needs to be reality and that seem incompatible.
But he plays both things as if he believes in both things equally as hard.
Well, he does.
He does.
I don't understand. That doesn't seem like, I don't know.
He can love Dany and he can love his brother at the same time. And I think the stakes are very different for Jaime and Varys, where Varys is actively trying to depose and kill Dany, whereas Jaime is just a prisoner, and the only person who's going to suffer for his release is Tyrion. So...
And he's only a prisoner because he walked the wrong way. Like, he hadn't actually done anything. They just suspect.
Yeah, one-handed swordsman is not going to tip the scale in Cersei's favor.
But it is an act of treason against his queen, who he loves so much, who still believes that will create this wonderful new world that he sees that is not going to happen anymore, yet still acts as devotedly to her.
Well, because he thinks he can make that happen. He thinks if he plays this the right way, he will be able to put the pieces in place. He thinks all these things are possible, right? Cersei can surrender. She and Jamie can go off and live their life with their, like, reboot kid. They can all, like, Dany can be the breaker of chains in this world, in Westeros. But I think he's, and he's like so desperate to make that happen that this is what it leads him to do. And I don't know, it was nice seeing him be a little selfless and be like, yeah, I just got Varys killed and now it's okay for me to put my own neck on the line. I don't like Tyrion a lot, and I appreciated that from him. Even though getting into Jaime's tent and letting him free and he just, I guess, walked out was a little much, but okay, fine.
The Unsullied just left. They
really left. They left.
Yep. Yeah, I thought he was just going to get in there, and he makes a point of like, well, I'm number 2, so did you get an order from the number 1? And they're like, oh, it adds up. Can't argue with this guy.
Yeah. Can we talk about the Unsullied? Do we have a special Unsullied portion?
No. But, I mean...
Guys, they were camped right outside the walls. How'd they get there?
They were also like in ballista range, like in bow shot range.
Right.
Like, how that visual
with the Iron Fleet sitting right there. Like, how did...
Well,
Rules of engagement.
Speaking of the Unsullied, we did have one scene between Dany and Grey Worm, who apparently has a real name according to the subtitles, with Missandei's last possession, her chain, I guess.
That was like a slave cuff, right?
Yeah.
The collar. I think.
The collar.
Collar runner.
Is that not just
great
Grey
to
Worm
actually
and Valerian?
I assume so, but I don't know Valyrian.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it would have been super helpful if we actually saw that in conversation play out a little longer. So where they have like that death pact of like, we're going to fuck everything up and that's our game plan and don't deter from it. Because it was obvious during that scene, right? Is the only time that they could have, made that game plan where everyone,
I don't think it's a game plan at all.
Yeah, it's not. It was in the moment thing, for better or for worse. I mean,
and he's gonna do whatever. Like he's gonna follow Dany's lead 100%.
And Grey Worm, when we get there, makes sense.
Yeah, his reaction of massacring the Lannister men does make sense.
Yeah,
whereas Dany's doesn't.
And I think she says something to him like, "You'll know the signal." So he's looking to her. He's not looking to Jon on what to do. So when he sees Dany going up there and burning everything, he's just gonna kill everybody too.
We could go back for just a sec. The scene with Dany and Tyrion, like where, they're trying really hard to like conjure the image of like the Mad King in Dany Reborn, which I'm not super a fan of, but I think Emilia Clarke handles it really, really well. And like the bags under her eyes and the way she's just like imagining everybody around her betraying her, that worked for me because that felt like a reasonable evolution of loneliness. As opposed
the shot
to
of
some
her
stuff that comes later.
The shot of her looking out the window, looking so just tortured and just like not knowing who she can turn to. That was very well acted, very strong.
Yeah, I was getting a strong.
Really made her look like her father too.
I was like, how long are her fingernails now?
Yeah.
Like I mean, that's when you knew it was going to happen. Like that look, I was like, it's so obvious, like telegraphed at this point. Like you don't want it to happen.
Yeah, I was hoping. It does make sense, like when Jon comes down, that he's like she's obviously in a state. And he's not into it. He is not attracted to her in that moment. He's a little off put and his game is not on. And unfortunately, apparently if he had just given her the Lord's kiss, millions might have survived.
So
give her some food and make her relax. I don't know.
Yeah. The Lord's kiss does, settle the savage soul.
Just one quick thing before we move on from just going back to Varys real quick. I just wanted to say that scene was apparently shot like 8 or 9 times over like 6 months, and they kept having to bring the actor back. So the fact that he actually killed it in that scene multiple times because they had to do different angles with different actors, and he was the only one that had to just keep coming back and dying. So I think that kind of puts it on a whole other level that he was excellent in that scene.
That poor actor.
Yeah, and the visual of like Drogon like kind of like fading into the background was really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Really scary. But they were way too close to that dragon fire.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone was, right?
Drogon has a focused beam mode that he uses.
Activate laser.
Yep.
That's how he's able to like blow up sections of stone. But no, like you ignore that aspect of it because the shot is so stunning. So.
And there's a pause between. I don't remember if this happens the other times Dany says Dracarys, but like when she said Dracarys, I was just expecting it to just go. And there's like, I don't know, 3 or 4 seconds before he actually does it. And that was like one of the most tense moments of the episode for me, because it was just like, maybe he's like, nah, Mom, this guy's a friend. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. It's a dragon. Like I've actually, CGI is good enough that I've like kind of forgotten that they aren't there. And especially with it being dark and stuff. By the way, this episode did pretty much all the visual things right that The Long Night did wrong. Like it showed us the things we should have seen, didn't show us the things we didn't need to see, suggested, whatever. It was, and it's directed by the same guy, so
I'm still
figure.
pissed that in The Long Night we didn't see just blue eyes in darkness. That just annoyed me the most.
Yeah.
It would have looked like
Only darkness.
kids with glow sticks.
Would have been better than
Well,
what
isn't
we
that what they
got.
did in the past?
Throw a little fat boy slim behind it, just like early 2000s rave. Everyone's on Molly having a good time.
Repping the choice.
Now, that's a long night.
Did we talk about the tent scene with Jamie and Tyrion?
No, but we're getting there. So the next scene is basically Jon arrives at I'm assuming the shores of King's Landing, where all the army, land army, is chilling out. He tells, and Tyrion arrives too. Tyrion asks Davos about something with smuggling, and then Tyrion goes to see Jamie, and they have their last moment together in the tent. That scene between Jamie and Tyrion, both actors are excellent with like those like brotherly type scenes, and you could really like feel like I felt very heartbroken for both of them because they're both just kind of in the same place that they were in the beginning of the season, but also just
I don't feel bad for Jamie.
Neither do I.
Shame.
I feel bad for Jamie in the sense that the writers fucked him over, but
Well, I think I feel sorry for everyone in this series for being fucked over by the writers.
best season ever.
I did kind of. Yeah, this was probably my favorite scene of the episode. I do think that of all the characters, these two have probably suffered the most in the TV show in terms of what they could have been. In particular, I'm so not a fan of how Tyrion has been handled for a long time.
You forget Dorne, my friend.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, that's a given.
Yeah,
but
who?
in this,
quantity of being fucked over.
and their significance, obviously. But yeah, in this scene, I don't know, just the acting was spectacular, and the idea, and this is to me is good writing. The idea of Tyrion having this moment to say, "You were the only person in the world that didn't treat me like a monster," like that is some powerful ass shit. Like I'm getting a little emotional right now talking about it. That is some strong stuff, and it was delivered really well, and it's a good last moment for them.
Yeah, but we have to remember all the way back to season 4 to when they had their last brothers talk.
So this is a problem, and it's the same thing with Cleganebowl, right? Which we'll get to, but it's the idea that these characters have not felt like characters for so long. The impact of the moments are lessened, but in isolation, this was really good.
This is definitely it shocked me when Peter Dinklage had emotion in his voice, like trembling, powerful emotion. It was like, oh, you're like Michal said, it's like, oh, that's right. Like he's a really talented actor when he's given material to work with. But yeah, I mean, this is straight out of the books, but it was really satisfying for me because like this is stuff that's like Tyrion never says those words directly to Jamie, but he internalizes them all the time, and it's like his POV. So just like, even though I know we'll never get this in the books in the same way that, we'll probably never get Jamie and Brienne hooking up in the books, I feel really satisfied getting this scene like on a level of fan service in the show. It felt really real and genuine.
Yeah, to me, it works and it doesn't work in like kind of equal. Like the scene of itself works. It's just like as somebody who, likes Brienne and likes Jamie's journey away from Cersei toward Brienne, it's ironic that like the last time we saw Jamie and Tyrion talk was like he was like, "So how's Brienne?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm blushing, leave me alone,"
Yeah.
And then Bronn came in and ruined everything. But like,
girl.
But now it's all like, go to Cersei, you love her, and I'm just like, why? But the scene of itself was good. If you forget that Brienne exists, the scene is really good.
I mean, we haven't seen her for a couple episodes.
We saw her last week.
She's pregnant.
No!
True Lannister heir!
Wash your mouth out.
Oh my
Is it a
God.
snow or...
Was that Adam?
Adam, you're getting a little robotic.
I said, would it be a snow or what the hell would it be?
Hill?
Brienne is from Where's Tarth? Is Tarth?
Oh,
Storm,
then it
what
would
is
be
it?
Storm.
Yeah.
Storm,
Where
that's
it's
right.
from, where it's born, like I don't know.
Yeah, she's staying up north, so it's going to be a snow.
Yeah.
But we digress.
Fast and loose.
Jamie Snow.
No.
Oh, you really think she's going to name it after the bastard father?
Oh yeah.
He like one-nighted her.
Ugh.
I would like to say it was a
In two different aspects, yes.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I got very emotional seeing, like, you know, I think that Dinklage was kind of like almost like whimpering at the end, and it just made me like, this scene was like one of the only scenes in this episode that felt okay, like. Yeah. But side note, the whole, was Davos smuggling something? Like, what was that about?
You
Did
bought
we
a
ever?
boat.
He was
Is it
getting
just the boat?
Jamie.
Trying to bring
Yeah,
a boat.
Davos apparated to the little pier at the end of King's Landing, and he came with his boat, and then he apparated back.
He's
Okay.
just that good.
Yeah.
And he,
What was
and
it?
he brought
Smuggler.
those like libido shellfish things.
Oh, pickled
Mhm.
crab? Or fermented crab?
Jesus.
Oh, you know what? That actually explains a lot of Euron's behavior. He just saw this barrel of stuff, and he was like, you know,
He's
oh, I'm
been
really
taking
down and
Taking
out.
those blue
Ooh.
pills for a while.
Oh, God, I can't wait till we get to Euron so we can talk about that.
Jesus Christ.
fire.
Ugh.
All right, so let's move on to the battle. So I think I'm just.
Are we gonna touch more on the like Dany and Jon scene, or just come back to that later?
I thought we already kind of discussed it because it was before that.
I have nothing more
Yeah,
to say
I
about
just-
that scene.
Okay. Well, I will just say that Jon, like right there, like fails extremely hard with his like whatever you want, babe. Like when she clearly needed help. So you know, I blame Jon. I blame Dany. I blame Cersei. I blame
God.
everyone in this episode.
John
Right,
sucks.
yeah,
I
man.
blame D&D.
I hate
Yeah.
John.
No one person
Katie, should
to
we
blame.
do our first one?
besides-
What?
Jon
Oh.
Snow. Boo.
Boo.
Ooh.
He's so bad. I hate him.
Okay, but why
I mean-
does he react that way to Dany? Is it because he just saw her burn Varys alive? Like, what has tipped him over into
I
being
think he
like?
keeps on forgetting that she's his aunt, and then remembers just as he goes in to kiss, and he's like, "Whoa!"
But they've never talked about that.
I know,
So
it's so
is that what it
confusing.
was?
No. That doesn't follow at all from the way they've set it up. It didn't seem like he had a
then
problem
she
with that
felt
at all
slighted?
before. It's killing Varys. It's him feeling, I think, disturbed by
Yeah,
that.
I think it's the. I mean, from what the scene seemed to be trying to say, like the way it's staged, it's kind of cool because you can see like the fire literally dividing them at a certain point, and that was what I took away from it. That he was like, "Ooh, this bitch crazy," you know, whatever. But I think we would need more articulation of that. Like, if he's really disgusted by that action, which by pretty much any rubric is.
Gross.
Well, no, but I think it's. I would, you know, I'm not pro killing Varys, but I think that like you have proof and a confession that he betrayed you, and you're on the brink of war. Like, I don't think that it's like the craziest thing ever that he would be executed.
Yeah, it's the same thing like he did at the wall with
remember-
with Janos.
Oh, it's
with
worse
Ollie.
because Ollie was a child.
Right,
Yeah.
with Ollie and stuff. Like it's no worse than that, which is the annoying.
But-
one
but I
of the
think-
annoying parts.
I think he already wrote that off when she killed the Tarleys, right? He's like, "You remember I had to kill people," and now it's like, "Oh, now her body count's getting a little high there," you know.
It just doesn't make sense, honestly.
Yeah, it doesn't make
Really?
sense. It's
Yeah,
not
I mean, I
right.
thought maybe it was the whole like because they're aunt and whatever thing. Like when he says "I love you," and then she goes in for it, and he kind of rejects her, and then she says, "Well, you know, let it be fear." Then, like, was she saying like, "Hey, if he hooks up with me now, maybe I make this work, and like I get together with him, and people will love me because they love him." But like, if he's rejecting me, I'll just roll through fear. Is that what that was? Or
It
am I
was some
misreading that?
bullshit allusion to like Machiavelli and the Prince. Like, you know, does the ruler want to be loved or feared? And yeah, that's
No, I know, but they almost made it seem like if Jon was down, she'd like, I'll go the love route, you know? Otherwise, I'm going the fear route,
Yeah,
which was
I
like,
think-
what the fuck?
Yeah, I think her takeaway is that he's afraid of her, and since like he's the one who is supposed to be the closest to her, and since he does not have her back, then she is completely alone, in her mind at least.
Yeah.
Right. And she was the first
Yeah.
person that she thought betrayed her when Tyrion's like, someone betrayed you, Jon?
yeah. The Lord's kiss would have smoothed it all over, though.
Well, no, I mean, it really is like, Jon, pick your moments a little bit, you know? Although even Dany's, I mean, I don't know if we're allowed to say that Dany has logic functioning at this point in the game, but like, she, like, it's a little bit disingenuous to be like, yeah, they all love you in the North. It's like, well, yeah, he's from the North, and like, oh, they all love you down here. You have no evidence for that. They probably don't care either way.
Jon
seems
has
wonderful.
literally shown up here.
Yeah. It's like, you're not Cersei? Cool.
Scenes like this are just totally incomprehensible to me, just because I was never able to buy this relationship at all. It just never felt earned or
Yeah,
reasonable.
that's the
And
issue.
every single time Jon says, like, I love you, you're my queen, like, it just feels so fake to me. I just cannot.
It's like when you say, I love you to your aunt. I love you. And it's like, no. Your family, of course I love you, but like, not that way. Come on.
I just can't.
Is he trying to convince himself, or I don't know?
Right.
Right. It's with the lack of chemistry between them, it just makes it more difficult for them to properly like convey the emotions that we're supposed to take away as the audience, and so that it just becomes incomprehensible.
And like, why is it such a big deal that like their relationship's falling apart? They've just been like fuck buddies for like 2 days, like, or like a couple weeks. Like, it's not like a big deal. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know,
doesn't seem
years
like
or
that
not
much
eternal
time has
time.
passed.
Yeah.
Can
You
I
know, some
like
girls
have a
get attached.
conspiracy theory moment for a second?
Oh
Yes.
boy.
So I'm wondering, because they have like laughably little chemistry. It's like actually hilarious. And they're both pretty good actors, so it's a little weird. I'm wondering, like, did they like explain to them the whole thing beforehand and like, oh yeah, so here's how it's gonna go. Like, you guys are gonna fall in love, but then you guys are gonna learn that he's the real heir and your aunt, and also she's gonna go totally crazy and murder a whole bunch of innocent people, like, on purpose. And if they were both like, oh, okay, let's play this love story. I don't know.
You think they're really sleeping together
One
in
for the
real life,
ages.
and that's why they can't do it on camera?
No, he was
No.
sleeping with Ygritte in real life, and then he married her, and they had plenty of chemistry on screen.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
Best chemistry.
there's all that talk about him being a cheater. I think
Not Kit Harington.
yeah. So
Except for the
my
sun.
conspiracy
Yeah.
theory is that they're actually boning off screen, and that's why they can't get it together to have chemistry on screen.
Congrats, Varley. You got me to have
Goodness.
Kit Harington cheating on my Google search.
And what did it come up with, Fred?
Oh boy.
I mean, my
Battle.
optimistic conspiracy theory is both of these actors have read the books, and maybe they're just feeling a little bit like this isn't like great, like where they're going, and maybe they're just so they're just fucking it over.
it's gonna be disappointing, as Kit Harington said himself.
Yep.
He was-
They read the scripts and they're just like, there's nothing we can do to help this.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna kind of divide the battle up by character. I think that we need the most time for Dany, so we're gonna talk about her first. Basically, the battle kind of starts out surprisingly by seeing Drogon in the sky from the sea side of things with Euron, and basically Dragon destroys all those, and then Dany and Dragon destroy all the other scorpions that are around everything, smash open everything, pretty much destroy the Golden Company, whatever. They were there for like 5 seconds. They continue to fight the battle, and Dany continues to fly over, burning things, and then when they ring the bells of mercy, Dany kind of turns a little crazy and burns everything down. Doesn't go straight for Cersei, but burns everything down.
All right, here we go.
To put something positive in before we lay into it, I did think that the moment of despair, like when Tyrion and Jon Snow realize what has happened, I felt like my stomach bottom out for them. It felt awful. Like, I think they set up like their dedication to her and their belief enough that like it felt like a gut punch. But also, Emilia Clarke, I have no idea what Dany's motivation is in this scene, but her face when she is looking at the crowd and she is making up her mind that she is just done with the city is really fierce. And like I've seen like plenty of gifs of it. Like she just nails it completely.
I just said her face was doing things, and especially impressive because she's like acting on like a giant, green cotton swab or whatever it is Drogon is these days. So, that's all green screen. She's got like nothing to go off of. So, she did a pretty good job there. The one time we saw her.
Yeah, this is the only time that we see her while she's burning all of King's Landing. Or right before she burns all of King's Landing. Matt, did you want to say something?
If you look really closely, you could see a tiny dot at the top. It's very
It's a Starbucks cup. No, but I just feel like, it should be all the actors. Like, all they do is just facial impressions. And I feel like Dany, most of all, it's just like, especially at the end of, last week's episode, I feel like if she had like some kind of visceral scream or something, it would have made it. But instead, she just looked like she bit into a lemon or something. Like I don't know. I'm not impressed.
I think the facial acting's on point with her. Personally, I think that it matches. I just don't think that the action necessarily, like in this episode, matched her, like totally matched her look. Like she was definitely like fearful and like she just didn't know what to do. But if I were the writer of the show, I would have had her go to the Red Keep and like burn Cersei first, and then after that happens, like everything else goes to shit. I feel like that would have made more sense, but this is what happened, and this is what we have.
An escalation instead of a snap.
To step back for just a second, though, I feel like this actually made me really annoyed that they have played Dany. And a lot of the characters, specifically a lot of the female characters, but characters in general, like, they're supposed to be extremely stoic, right? And Lee Nahidi pulls that off perfectly. Not a ton of other characters do as well. I think Sophie Turner's grown into it, but I think Emilia Clarke has been like she has like one voice that she uses. It's kind of like the Dracarys voice. She has very little interiority, very little opportunity to like emote, basically. And seeing her, in that initial scene with Tyrion, and then seeing her on Drogon's back, like I was like really upset for the Dany that we could have gotten and the highs and lows that we could have gone through, because she's like, and Katie and I were discussing this before, like part of what's frustrating about this is that Dany's actually very rarely been on the back foot. And so her actions have been, because of that, like her actions have been kind of like approved of by the show. They've rarely criticized, like they don't criticize her locking duck sauce in the vault, they don't like.
Oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah, right. Like there's so many things that she does that are questionable, but the show just like plows ahead because Dany's got this like mask on and she never talks about it, and nobody like it never becomes an issue until Tyrion's like, what do you mean she's gonna burn the Tarleys? And like suddenly all side eye. And like I find it sad that like we didn't get a character who could have been more emotive and more like more demonstrating what it would really be like for, which is something that George does, what it would really be like for a young woman with tremendous power and, apparently the blessing of the gods to go through this.
Sure. Dany's her primary complication is she a conqueror or is she a conciliator? And she can't be both, because the power that she is using to break the wheel is the power that made the wheel. Like, that is her dilemma throughout the entire books. That is the subtext of her journey, is that she wants to do these great, powerful things, but ultimately it's a self-serving venture. But they do not do that in the show at all. Like, they don't explore that in any way. Like, it is just the awesome Dany show for 7 seasons, and that's why it feels like such a bizarre turn at the last minute. I'm like I said it before, like, I'm okay with like Dany burning King's Landing. I am okay with her like failing in her like quest to be a messiah. That is a valid choice. However, if you have been communicating to your audience for 7 seasons through tone and theme and acting and storytelling that this is your hero, and this, and like everything she does is maybe a little uncomfortable, but ultimately approved of by like everything in the show, like it just feels
well, I mean, like,
bizarre.
So I know that there's like baby onesies that say like future Khaleesi, and like, you know, they built this up as like a strong, just, powerful woman that should be a role model to, you know, young women and, you know, women our own age, I guess, too. But and now you see her as this, and it's almost like Dave and Dan just made it like into like a hysterical period joke that she just went off the rails, like in this moment when she had a real choice to make.
Yeah, I think Pasha posted something that there was like 600 babies born in the U.S. like named Khaleesi last year or something like that.
Jesus Christ, people are so stupid.
Yeah,
That's fine. It's not her name, so it's okay.
No, and well, there was like 200 named Daenerys.
There's a different Khaleesi from the past.
Could be any Khaleesi. But I mean, you know, if I may, I think like the part that's really frustrated me over the last 24 hours has been all of the people, and a lot of them seem to be mostly show-only watchers, being like, we've seen this in season 1. You guys are stupid for not seeing this. The fact of the matter is that David and Dan have even said, well, no, she's not the Mad King and all this stuff. We saw her burn the Tarleys, which was cruel, but it's always played off as she's doing these extreme things because she has limited power, and she needs to use her one weapon, you know, the dragons or whatever power she has, to let people know, like, I'm not to be fucked with, because she doesn't have a firm control anywhere she's been. She's never had that firm control where she could rule, you know, without the show of power. So now we come to this point where basically it's the last like couple of episodes that they've sort of been laying the groundwork for this, and you're like, what's going on? But not even enough to make this make sense to me personally. I mean, I can understand this happening. You know, we've theorized that maybe this is something that could happen in the books even. But to say that like, oh, they've been laying the groundwork forever because her dad was the Mad King, man. He just snapped after Duskendale. It's like, well, actually, as a kid, he was kind of a shit. And he hung around with Tywin because Tywin was a shit. And like, you know, he was kind of going down that crazy path long before Duskendale. You know, I don't know. The signs were just not there. And that's because they wanted to pull the rug out from under us because they think that's what the show is about. Right. Ned loses his head at the end of season 1, so we got to pull the rug out. Everyone wants the rug pulled out. Like,
what a twist!
Yeah, yeah. And you're like, okay, fuck you guys. And then they hand wave it by saying, "Oh, well, you know, yeah, her dad was the Mad King. She's Targaryen, so this could happen." And you're like, whoa, that's not how that works. I mean, in this very episode, they say like, what is it? Varys said like at birth, you know, they flip the coin. And you know, we haven't really seen this from birth with her. I mean, she's had issues, but everyone says that, you know, when her brother died, she wasn't sympathetic enough. It's like, well, he was an abuser who just threatened her child, and she had no power there. She was under, you know, Drogo's power, obviously. And so in the book, we see that she dissociates from that. You know, she views him as like the man who used to be my brother. Like, you know, it's a survival tactic. It's not that she's like, yeah, happy to kill my brother. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, you have to kind of reverse engineer the things that they set up with Dany to make it work. Like, for example, for me, a scene that I think does kind of set this up in a way that makes sense to me, but just wasn't played out that way in the show, is the moment where she says she's going to break the wheel. That scene, which in the moment reads as very just and reasonable, a thing that, you know, she thinks is genuinely attainable, but always read to me is something highly delusional. Like that just was never a dream that could be achieved. Yeah. And they kind of played a lot harder this season, saying things like, I'm going to remove the world of tyrants, and I'm going to be a wonderful queen that is going to make everything peaceful forever. Like that was such a ridiculous, like, impossible dream that it kind of fits into this idea of her being chasing something that never made sense.
It's like her dad wanting to build a new city next door to King's Landing because King's Landing was smelly.
Yeah, I thought that was Cersei.
I mean,
No, that was one of the Mad King's early ideas.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's a bummer because it's like there are compelling ideas here. Like this could have worked. Like the whole time Dany is watching King's Landing in the back of my mind, I'm like, God, like this is actually really impressive. Like as a character finale for like as a way for this character to end, if the work had been done and they just did not do the work. You cannot have like your like Tyrion and Varys like whispering to each other and be that enough. Like there has to have been something, I don't even know, just something better. This character
people saying that a character is crazy or might be crazy is not making a character act crazy.
Right, like this is a character who loves violence, but so does everybody else in the show. Like other characters have been doing like insanely grotesque and violent things, but not all of them have had like this sudden snap. It's very...
Name one.
Casey, what were you gonna say?
No, I mean, it's just basically what you guys have been saying. There's no work that's led up to this. And it just seems very half-assed and very, as I was saying before, just for, you're not going to expect this season that Dany's going to snap, but just wait until you see the 5th episode. Like, it just seems like, D&D, Dave and Dan are very good at, shocking everybody. That's what they've been doing since the first season. And, I mean, largely to George R. R. Martin's credit. But it just... there was work set up to make those things happen earlier on in the show, and it just seems like, Dany has been very violent. Like she's definitely like come down hard on people, but she usually has like some kind of lead up to that where she's like, you did this thing. This is why I'm murdering you, and like,
the Masters of Marine literally crucified 120 children on her way to Marine.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the most horrific things she does, and it's inspired by this unbelievable act of cruelty.
Yeah.
I just keep thinking like I can't like. Well, no, like in terms of what you were saying about the lead up, Casey, I think like there's like a literary idea of endings being surprising but inevitable. And like that's what you're going for. That's and Ned's death is surprising but inevitable. The Red Wedding is surprising but inevitable. Dave and Dan are not capable of surprising but inevitable. They're just capable of surprising. And because if they had wanted to do this, they would have actually put in the work of making Dany grapple with her sanity. Like one of the things that has been making me angrier and angrier the more I think about it is in the previously on Game of Thrones, they actually use that to do story work that they haven't done. When they have all those voices crowding into Dany's head as she's like, walking away from King's Landing at the end of the last episode, and it's how dare you do this? You guys, you didn't do this work, and you can't have the previously on do that work for you. You're trying to get a shortcut in so that we accept it when she just like takes a breather, looks at the place where her enemy is, and looks down at the innocent people and goes, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna kill the innocent people. It doesn't. There's no. No.
You know what? I did scene. Like, what if there was an actual scene that we saw at some point? Her having that moment.
Good. It was a really good supercut too.
Yeah, like that would have been cool.
I mean, it wouldn't have worked just because they've never used that tactic before. Like, they've never used that kind of voiceover thing in the show before, so it would have just been weird of her like hearing all the voices around. I feel, but it was cool.
Maybe. I think, Michal, you're exactly right, because I really picked it up on my rewatch that the previously on totally telegraphed and did all that work that you just said it did. And I like, that's, you're right.
If we
It's not how shows are supposed to work.
Like, okay, let's take, for a minute, let's just remove, like, the crazy argument and, like, try to guess at what her motivation is for wanting to kill. Like, thousands, if not millions of people, because she has never like maybe like individuals, but like every like group of people she's ever struck out against have been people that have either been military or people who have threatened like women and children, slaves. Like she's never like lashed out at a group of like defenseless people. So it's like, what is going through her mind that she looks down at them like, how dare you be afraid of my dragon? How dare you not love me? Like right up the bat. Is
it because they didn't ring the bells soon enough and she's mad?
So the best devil's advocate interpretation of it that I've heard, it was just a friend of mine kind of posed this idea, was that so initially in the last episode they go to Cersei and they offer her a chance to surrender, and instead they kill Missandei. So the idea is that it's so audacious of Cersei to dare to surrender now after she has lost that she is going to be punished for that choice.
But she doesn't.
But the people
Also punish
don't
Cersei.
punish Cersei.
Of those people.
Yeah. Well, she got really mad about it, like a big punish, big rage.
Right,
I mean, big punish.
This city that you are imminently about to not rule, I am going to destroy.
No.
If Missandei had been killed in front of like a cheering crowd or something,
yeah, there you go.
I could buy her being like, "Fuck these people," but
yeah, that's
but Katie, what
reason I could come up with that is logical is to basically kind of what Thanos was, where it's just like these people don't deserve the prosperity and rule that I'm going to bring them, and they don't love me for that, so I'm just going to burn it all down and then rebuild it again with new, different people. Like that's kind of the only thing I could think of. But
Right. The only thing that I thought of was that if Cersei is her focus here, instead of going straight to Cersei, the only thing she could be doing is like trying to like build like the fear, like by like I'm just going to destroy everything around you until like Cersei freaks out, which doesn't even make sense either. But that's
you know what's really insane about it? The Mad King would not do this. He would not take this approach.
Yeah,
that's what makes this so insane. And so even if
so out of character,
even if she truly lost her mind, Mad King Aerys, the reason that he was going to destroy King's Landing is so that Robert would be the king of the ashes.
Yeah,
so
let him be king of cooked meat and burn bones or whatever it says. Yeah.
So Dany has won the battle. She has won. There is no resistance left. We see clearly that all the soldiers lay down their arms, and then she decides that I'm going to burn everything and destroy the city I have already taken. I'm going to destroy my people. Right. I'm going to destroy my own castle. For what? Like, even if you're insane, that just doesn't follow at all.
It really
the city that her family is responsible for building. Like, of all the cities in the entire Seven Kingdoms, like that's the one that the Targaryens essentially made their second home. So like I could, and that's the thing I would argue that wouldn't happen. I could see Dany in the books burning down a city, but of all of them, not King's Landing. Because like that's essentially her family's city.
Not intentionally, I wouldn't think.
Right. Well, they have that moment where the wildfire goes off, right? And it's like, okay, well, that might have been an interesting thing where she was like, oh, hang on a second.
Which is now controlled wildfire explosions somehow.
Yeah. So if that had happened, like that might have been, irony. Or Tedard was suggesting to me on Twitter, he was like, what if Dany hadn't heard the bells and genuinely didn't realize that they had surrendered? And then she thinks that this is the situation. That's not the situation, but that's the circumstance that she's acting under. And I think like all you need to do, or to all the proof you need that they haven't thought about this and haven't done the work of even like the bare minimum of thinking about her character is the fact that after that look on her face where she decides to burn them, she's gone. All she is Drogon. That's it.
Yeah.
And she's like, and there's no rhyme or reason. There's no nothing. It's basically like where the camera happens to be, and where sometimes Arya happens to be, and where Cersei happens to be. That's where like the Dany and the like
little
the
Dragonfire look cool here.
Yeah, like the whatever Germans bombing London. It's basically it's that impersonal. There's no motivation. There's no. Like, I think, I don't even think they had any idea of, like, because what expression would she have on her face? What would she do? Would she be, like, we don't know. so we can't, all she can be is this agent of destruction. And the character deserves more than that. Like, she just does.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. First, I was going to say that one of the main selling points of the Unsullied was that Jorah said that there would be no needless slaughter, there would be no rape when you took the cities. Like, they'd only listen and do what they're told, which I feel like kind of got transferred to Jon in this episode when he sees his men kind of taking off women and killing, random people. And that was just to speak to her not killing innocent people.
Yeah, I understand your point, Varley, but also Missandei. Like that was like the one part that did make sense to me. Like, it's Grey Worm flipping from that.
So I think I can understand her being overcome by rage temporarily and burning some people, but rage doesn't work like this. Rage is not a thing where you're just mad for an hour as you systematically wipe out every single row of the entire city. She would cool down at some point. Like, that's how rage works. It's not like something that burns for
apparently you've never had real rage, but
no, but it's true.
The
because
first
also
thing we see her burn are the Lannisters,
and
right?
she's supposed to be an empathetic person, right? Like, obviously an imperfectly empathetic person, but she's not somebody who, like, looks at pain and goes like, ooh, I like this, So
yeah, this is literally the person who gave up her life goal to send her entire army, including her dragons, and take them north to save the world. Like, this
2
was
episodes ago.
Right. And I guess, like, now the world isn't worth saving because Jon wouldn't have sex with her.
Yeah, but she saved the world so she can, like, destroy some of it, right?
Oh my god.
Sure, I can make it work. I can, like, contort logic into my, like, twist it, and it's too fast. It's too much and it's too fast.
She watched Infinity War and went, you know what? Thanos has a point.
Well, no, because she wants to kill everybody.
Right.
It's a lot worse.
Right.
I mean, I could have seen,
Endgame.
like, she first attacks the soldiers, and suddenly, like, a wildfire cache goes off, and she's like, oh shit, and, like, that sets off the destruction of the city or something. Or if she'd just gone to the keep, which is the home she's been claiming is hers for 8 seasons now, and she just ripped it down. Whatever.
It contains that throne that she's wanted for.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
So this all would have worked so much better if they had been losing the battle and Cersei was winning, and Dany realized the only way that she could win is if she burned the Red Keep and killed all those people. And she realizes this is my only path to victory, and it's a Pyrrhic victory, and it's one that's going to torture her, and it's one that's a mistake, and it's something that makes everyone actually dislike her and all these things. But that actually makes sense. There's actually a motivation there that you can follow and understand.
If Drogon got hurt, maybe, like something, anything other than we won. Dany, read the room. Dany.
Oh, and also, by the way, apparently the ballista is not a problem anymore.
That was great.
Yeah.
We didn't even cover how. Yeah, last week they can shoot a mile and never miss, and this week they're like, oh fuck, can't hit a thing.
Yeah, she comes from like a slightly different angle, and it's yeah.
Or how badass the Golden Company is, and we should all fear them because that's big shit.
And it's also like I could imagine them being them doing something where, like, I keep coming back to the idea that, like, Dany has a capacity for violence. We know this. That doesn't correlate to extreme violence necessarily. It could correlate to, let's say, she captures Jaime and Cersei and maybe has them publicly tortured or something. Like, there are ways to express that she is acting without restraint and in extremis that are still, like, that you can still tie into the character's reasonable motivation. And they just don't care enough to do that.
Exactly. And I think the thing that is bothering me the most about this entire thing is, like, they could have, I mean, as we're kind of saying, we're giving our, like, they could have done it this way, they could have done it that way, things to make sense of this transition that Dany is coming into. But all that I can see from Dany is her fearing becoming this, like, over seasons and seasons. And that is definitely something that could foreshadow her becoming this, but that is the only thing, and it makes me so angry that just because she feared becoming crazy, she is now crazy. And I'm very bothered by that. That's the reason why she's crazy now.
Anakin.
Yeah, no, I think that's very powerful, Casey, because I think it's like I don't think they're like bound to like a positive depiction of mental health or whatever in Game of Thrones, but I think that like they have to have a reasonable, palpable through line in order to justify, making somebody the way that they turn Dany into, and they don't. I mean, could you guys imagine? Like, I think that actually would have been really cool if like she's torturing Cersei or something, and it's like, crap, like, why are we rooting for Cersei now against Dany? Like, that's really
right.
And George is actually really good at that. Like, that's what the walk of shame is for me. That's like, like I'm totally pro Cersei in that moment, and I really don't like her most of the time, and it's but they didn't go more complicated than like this person is bad. They like didn't. That's all. Like, that's where they stopped. They didn't do like a what kind of consequence would that have on the way we view the power dynamics and the rest of the story and blah 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 blah.
It's also just very like, I feel like they've fleshed out Jon kind of battling this, where he he has to deal with more of his I'm forgetting the word. He can't be all like Ned all the time, but he also like can't go too harsh, and he gets in trouble for that like in I think it's season 5. And that's very like, Jon is very like fleshed out, and like he has some nuance to him, but Dany has been like this one thing for a while, and we're all like, yeah, it's just because they can't really write women, but like this just like exemplifies to me that like they really can't show like a woman like Dany or Sansa like dealing with their pain without making it seem like a quick switch, or like because of something super insulting. Like, I don't know, it just makes me very angry.
I think they don't know how to write Jon, though.
I hope Jon starts hearing voices in the next episode.
Yes. Also, 3, 2, 1. Jon Snow. Boo.
Boo. Well, if I may, for a second, like Jon. No, it's just
you may not.
Jon had several seasons where they went off the book material, and they actually kind of developed his character as a leader, right? With the Watch and the people that come up with him and protecting Sam and all that. And then sort of once they ran out of the books, they just sort of stopped doing that. So now it seems that they clearly have Jon on this path to be. I mean, I don't think he survives next week, but maybe not. They clearly have him on the path as like he's gonna ascend and take out Dany and all this. But like every time that they put him in a position of leadership, he just kind of is terrible at it. Like, they say, well, look, he does this heroic thing, so people love him and he's a leader. But that's not what a leader is. Like, he does things that are, big moments for the show, but he fails at leading men. He doesn't really do anything to help Dany. He doesn't do anything to really help his own people, help the Northmen. He's constantly fucking everything up. And then we hear them telling us the same stuff that they say about, like, Dany. Like, oh, but Jon's such a great leader. Everyone loves Jon. So it's like they're not laying the groundwork there for him either. Like, they're just bad at this shit.
Yeah, and that's where, to me, it kind of verges into the misogynistic territory, is the way that Jon, without having earned it at all as a character to me, is like treated like this amazing human being. Like, I every time they say like Jon is such a good guy, is such a good leader, like I just don't understand what they're getting at all there. I don't understand what he does that makes him that way, and his character, I don't know. I just hate characters that are like that, like magnanimous, perfect characters that have no flaw and are just like a right, and just I don't know, that's the part that's so ridiculous to me, and the way he's treated as being like the solution to all of these problems, I don't get it.
And then he doesn't really do anything.
Right, yeah, and he doesn't actually do it. I don't know.
Zach, the word you're looking for is Mary Sue.
Well,
yeah.
If the conclusion next week is that all the characters, unilaterally decide that maybe monarchy is not a good idea, maybe this could be a redeemable moment for the show. But if the conclusion next week is just like, let's trade Dany for Jon, I don't know what I will do. It'll
The papers Varys was given that little girl were parts of his communist manifesto. And They just gotta spread that around.
Break the wheel.
Seize the means of production.
The problem is, I mean, because that's something I could see happening in the book of transitioning more of the monarchy to an oligarchy. But the problem with the show is that they haven't been, and this is a limitation of television. You can't keep track of so many minor characters. But since, there are like no other, smaller lords and lesser vassals to like form a great council to pick a leader. There's just like not enough people.
Well, because Cersei blew them all up.
I mean, no, but not really. Like, we still have people in like Dorne and the Riverlands and
the Prince of Dorne.
Hightower.
Forgot about him.
Like, yeah, and all this, like, and obviously in Asha too. Like, there was stuff available to use, in terms of politicking and kind of working this Cersei versus Dany. I mean, it's something for seasons past, but
yeah.
It's stuff that was available that was not used.
Like you said,
go ahead.
It's impossible to follow all those smaller houses, but there were opportunities. Like Sam went to the Citadel. They showed the High Tower. They could have, brought up the fact that the High Towers were a powerful house. I mean, we haven't seen them in the books either, so who knows? But
right,
yeah.
But they're coming. Like, I mean, that's because the story hasn't gone there, and they specifically keep themselves out of it. But we'll see them now with Euron.
Well,
speaking of Euron, though.
Oh, God damn it.
Well, I mean, that kind of speaks more to, the comment I made earlier where this battle could have happened at the beginning of season 7. And it's kind of the after effect of not having both Euron or Fagon, where the only third act villain they had left was Cersei. And so they had to delay this for such a long time and keep her alive. And now they have a moment where they have the time where she's, they're ready to kill her off. That's when Dany suddenly becomes, that's when the dragons become unkillable and are able to dodge ballistas and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was trying to transition though.
Yeah, no.
Well, just as just a final thought, I guess.
Sorry.
I do think that this kind of storyline is coming in the books if we're going to play that game, and I like it. I like it as an idea of Dany, and it's something we've seen already. Her wrestling with the options, as Katie said, to be a conqueror, a conciliator. And I think it's fascinating to see it played out in a credible long-term setup way. And I've basically said this to everyone lately, but if you want to read more about how this works as Dany is a tragic hero, I recommend Eliana from Girls Gone Canon. Her Twitter name's completely incomprehensible to me. I don't know how to say it, but
I think it's Glass Table
Girl
or Arithmetric.
Yeah. No, that's Arithmetric is Twitter. Glass Table Girl is Reddit.
Arithmetric. Thank you. She wrote a blog on this idea very recently, and kind of exploring how she will get to this point and the kind of war between her desire to kind of be loved by people and just have a I don't know, like a community of people that she can be a part of, and just being a part of something, and her need to get remove all that from her to be a monarch, and that tension between being a person who is just loved by people, someone who has to rule. It's really good.
And we know Martin can do that, right? I mean, we saw what he's done with Theon throughout the books, so.
But we've also seen it set up, I think, in Dance when she starts hearing voices and, they're saying, the dragons know who you are. Do you know who you are? And my second point before I got distracted with some personal stuff would be that Olenna even told her, like, you have to be a dragon. Like, so I think, like, she was saying, like, this is, this kind of action of, like, you have to burn your enemies, you have to destroy them and show your power, or else, you're just another usurper or whatever. I think we're kind of seeing maybe a descendance into madness at the end of Dance, or a literary mechanism that could show her descent a little more, because it's already been established now that she's been having, conversations with ghosts and the wind or whatever.
No, I agree. I think people who are objecting to this plotline are being a little bit generalized in terms of Dany going crazy period is not acceptable, and I'm sure some people feel like that, but that's not, I think that's definitely not how I feel. I just think George can handle it with delicate artistry and actual resonance, as opposed to just boom, you're crazy. But it's just so frustrating to see that in contrast with Jon, who I keep thinking of the Mean Girls meme. It's how do I even begin to describe Jon Snow? Oh my god, he is flawless. I want to make a meme of that with the Dave and Dance stupid interviews that they do, because it's just and we even have a moment where he stops a rape, of course, because why wouldn't somebody start raping somebody when the sky is on fire and buildings are falling all around you, and it's almost like Game of Thrones is a parody of itself, and it's deeply, deeply frustrating.
Yeah, Jon couldn't even get that Night King though.
Yeah. So you're on, Katie. What do you have to say about him?
Go ahead, Casey.
No, it's fine. I'm just gonna say we're gonna officially move on to Euron and this whole thing about him and Jamie having this last fight, because Euron's the only Ironborn to survive from the whole dragon burning ships thing, and that's all I have to say about that.
He washes up on that same tiny little strand of shoreline as Jamie at the exact same moment. Okay, I know I'm not gonna. I don't want to complain about that, because we can't do that. But it's God. What is this scene? Why are they fighting? What is it?
Why did they even introduce Euron? They could have had any
character
ever.
We wanted a pirate.
Needed the ship.
So a little behind. I don't know if this has anything to do with it. I think it's mostly because they've made Euron this magical plot device, and they just wanted to, give him a fight, whatever. But also, I think they said that him and Nikolai had worked together for 15, 16 years, and this was the first time they got to beat the shit out of each other. So the actors were enjoying it.
Well, that's not a good reason.
Yeah.
No, the actors liked each other.
But that's what they do. I'm just saying, you want to know why? Their motivation for stuff often has to do with stuff outside the show. So
did that fight scene strike anyone else as ridiculously, grossly Freudian? I was
I killed the Kingslayer.
I felt like we were supposed to be having some great macho release over which penis is Cersei is Owen Cersei or something, and I was yeah.
Yeah,
I will pass on my genes.
Euron has some issues.
It's my baby. Sure. No, it's my baby.
The best comment I saw on this, and this is why this scene is just so funny to me, is this idea that Euron Greyjoy died the way he lived, showing up at a convenient time and place out of nowhere, doing whatever the plot needed him to do, and having whatever motivation was necessary at the moment. And just the idea of him emerging from the water out of nowhere is just so perfect for the way his character's been set up in the show. Oh, he's here now. Fuck shit up, because that's what Euron does.
I saw something similar that was Euron Greyjoy, I think also died as he lived, making everybody go, oh, this fucking guy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny, yeah. Wandering in off the set of a different show. That's another one I saw.
Honestly, if he turned up with an eye patch and blacked out teeth, I don't even know if I would have noticed.
Blood coming out of one eye and a patch that he just stole from someone else. There you go.
Yeah. If Euron shows up in this new TV show they're doing randomly just to do something, I would actually really like that. He's a time traveler that just shows up in any situation where he's needed.
He's always looking for the final leap home.
Oh my god.
I really wanted Jamie to also just catch his sword in his golden hand. That's how I wanted that battle to end.
Wait, fuck. Jamie, when he's getting in the city, he puts his hood up, but he keeps his golden hand out.
He didn't learn.
I was waiting for him to get jumped by a bunch of like street urchins who beat him up
also-
and take his hand.
He also like when they get like locked out of the castle walls, he's like raving up his like gold hand, like, "Hey, I'm totally Jaime Lannister right here. Hello."
Yeah, it's like soldier.
That was great. But when he gets into the city, he specifically takes like a covering off the hand, right? But then puts the hood up.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what?
Well, so we knew him, from the rest of the rabble that was going. Was anyone else confused to what gate they were getting? Like, were they heading out? Were they coming in?
No, it was Maegor's Hold. It was the Red Keep. Like, they're locking the inner doors of the, there's a separation wall of the Red Keep to the rest of the city.
This is
they were at capacity.
This is also where we get introduced to Vicky and her child.
So this woman's on another
what?
show based on a video game or some shit?
Vicky is the lady with short hair. She has my haircut, and she has a child, and Arya is going to get her and her kid killed later.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Vicky? She has a name?
Was trying to drag her away from stuff, and then the Khalasar kind of ripped them apart. Then the dragon came. I don't think Arya did it.
I don't know if she has a name. There's some screenshots floating around of her banging on the door that have like, it's like Vicky, like that's what the screenshots say. So maybe, and I don't know.
She has a little pixie cut. She looks very mousy, and she has a little small child. That
she is the one lesbian left in this whole show. She doesn't make it out this episode. It is a huge bummer.
No, they've forgotten to kill Asha.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
Right, yeah, they reached maximum lesbian capacity.
She still has tits to fuck off other women.
I mean, and that's, you'll get into it later, but yeah, I mean, that's the main problem where since they had to bring Arya down to like give us some tension since they haven't cared about the small folk like at all over the course of the last few seasons, so that they had to bring a main character down just to be there to make us try and feel the horror of what's going on around them with Dany burning the city down. Really, really ineffective.
They try really hard to like focus in on some of these extras who are running around screaming. The Lannister guardsmen, they just explode when they're stabbed. Like more squibs.
Guys, this is the most people on screen on fire ever. Just saying. Saying. That's great. That's true.
Well, I did kind of enjoy the fighting part with the gore because in the books they usually, say like they cut someone open from like collarbone to mid chest or from groin to shoulder, and like we really got to see it during this little bit of fighting.
Yeah. So let's move on to Arya. Just as a general like overarching, or just generally in this battle scene, I think that one of the things that was done well in this episode was really showing the small folk and choosing to show like all of this death and destruction and what they're dealing with, and they chose to do that through Arya, and I thought that this really worked well for the episode, honestly.
Totally. I mean, it works well in that it's, other than the wagon train, like this is the first time we've really been on the ground floor like as a dragon attack is happening, where it's like, oh yeah, this is actually this kind of sucks. Yeah, I could have done with a little less like rocks falling for later, like for what felt like an hour of Arya just getting pummeled back and forth. But yeah, other words, like the ground action was pretty spectacular.
Once you get that cut to seeing the ash starting to build up in the dust, just the way that it completely smothers everything and obscures everything, that part was so good. Love that.
Yeah, I was getting a little like flashbacky from watching 9/11 movies when there's like just too much like that cloud of dust. I don't know if that was their intention or not, but it was effective.
They compared it to something else, but I think that's kind of what they were going for. And I think Arya was kind of last minute. They were deciding who they like needed someone to go down there like shortly before this was shot, and they were like, Arya makes sense, so they put her in there.
Like it doesn't make sense, We still haven't gotten an explanation for why Arya is like family, 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 family. Bye, Winterfell. I'm never coming back. So we have that dangling question. So the fact that she's like going south, period. Like I know she wants to kill Cersei.
She's starting a new life.
Right. She decides to kill Cersei now, even though like really, if that was her plan, like that would have been useful for everybody else to know. Given that that's the main goal of most of the characters.
Right.
Yeah.
Why didn't she go to Daenerys and say, "Hey, give me a shot. Give me like a couple days to see if I can fix this."
She doesn't trust Dany, but still, like,
I killed the Night King.
Yeah, it couldn't
Yeah.
hurt. What she
But
could
she
do,
could have
like,
told Jon to be like, hold up all the troops. Like, you don't have to march all the way down south.
yeah,
It's a waste of time and money.
Daenerys doesn't have time for two things: food and sleep.
But so on top of all that, like, it was again one of those things where Game of Thrones does that I was like, I'm enjoying this because the acting is good and there's enough resonance from previous seasons that it's landing for me. But of itself, there's like a little bit that doesn't work. Like her scene with Sandor in the room with the map floor, is a great scene and a really good cap to both of their arcs. But then Arya is just like, oh, you know what? You're right. I don't need to do revenge. Never mind. And then she just like turns around and leaves. Right, exactly. It's way safer outside where the dragon is. Like, they're just, it didn't ruin it for me, but it was like, I don't know exactly why you're the POV here. It actually would have made more sense for Tyrion, in my opinion, but.
Yeah,
I think that what they were going for was trying to humanize Arya, like, which they've done a little bit of. Like, she's been this like stone cold killer, and they want to kind of bring her back a little bit. And like they did that by running her through all of this dying humanity. Maybe that helps bring her a little back. I don't know. I mean, I like the scenes that were shot. Arya, I think they just chose mostly because of Maisie Williams, but.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like the scene with Sandor, I just was not buying that at all. It just didn't come across. It didn't come across at all to me that Arya suddenly, as Michal says, changes her mind in this moment because Sandor is like, yeah, that's not a good idea. You're gonna die here. I don't understand that at all. And I think, like you guys are saying, she's just like something for the camera to focus on. And it doesn't add anything to this. Like her being there adds nothing for me in any of these scenes. It's just she's the, like you say, Adam, she's the character people like a lot, so let's put her in the spot and show her doing this stuff.
And maybe they need her to help with Dany now, or because otherwise she just stays. She's out of the show. You don't really need her anymore
because she rides away on Shadowfax.
The scene with Sandor, I guess, I like Arya just sort of giving up her quest. Like it kind of works for me, because the acting, I think, really sells it. And I found that line to be deeply tragic of, you don't want to, like, do you want to, what does he say? Like, do you want to be, or don't be like me, or you don't want to be like me, which is just like a deeply sad line of, like, he knows he's going to, like, he has nothing. He has no hope for himself whatsoever. And he doesn't, like, do you really want, like, revenge to be how you die? No, you have a life. Get out of here.
And I think she knows that because of their earlier journeys together, like, just what a fucking asshole that has made him. Like, and yeah, I think at that moment, like I said, like it's very like Lord of the Rings with Eowyn. She's like, I'm not going to be a shield maiden anymore. I'll work in the houses of healing. I'll help people. Like there's just this sudden switch in her that goes from one motivation to like almost the polar opposite. Even though she doesn't do a very good job of saving people, but
I think the reason that moment works for me in Lord of the Rings is like the way Lord of the Rings is set up as a story is like much more like a Greek tragedy or something like that. Like it's the ways that characters are motivated by things don't kind of follow logic or realism in any way. Like a character will just have like a big epiphany, a moment of revelation, and that'll change their attitude. And that's how I read that. But that's not how Game of Thrones is. That's not the way that they set the scenes. It doesn't feel like that. It's not that kind of story. So it just I didn't buy it. And a huge part of that is,
if Gendry couldn't bring her back.
Right. Kendra couldn't do it. Why does Sandor? No, I think in the moment Sandor is the right character, and I get what you guys are saying. I think it comes back to what we've talked about, where if they had taken some time to kind of set this up and to have her kind of having this kind of struggle, it would have been more credible. It's just the fact that she just suddenly flips the switch. I didn't really get it.
Well, I kind of brought it up in last week's review that she's kind of like a Manchurian candidate. Like even in The Long Night, you know, she's scared, she's running, she's active, she's emoting, and then what's her name? Melisandre's like, you know, what do we say to the Lord of Death? And then she kind of like, you know, straightens up and goes expressionless and is like, not today. All right. Like I feel like she gets into her, yes, I love the family, I love the Starks, like let's do that kind of face, and then like into her killer face, and this was Sandor turning her back.
Are we?
Let's move
from him also. Like it is a beautiful moment. Like I'm really not criticizing the fact that it happens, but like it also comes after they've apparently ridden all the way down from Winterfell side by side, and right when they're at the end, he's like, "Oh wait, you know what? Never mind. You shouldn't do this." It just like they were just logical things that bugged me about it.
Well,
but
yeah,
emotionally, yes, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Rory McCann really showed like his sincere wish that he wants better for Arya, like just in his acting, and that helped make the scene a little more moving.
Yeah, and I mean, just all of these scenes going through the city were shot so well as well.
Yeah. So let's move on
This is
to.
the first time they had to build King's Landing for the season, so which is why they were able to blow it up and stuff. Which is also why the outside maybe looks different and look like they're in a fucking desert because it's in a completely different location because they had to build a set.
Yeah, where the fuck is winter in King's Landing?
Yeah.
I guess.
Whatever. But anyways, let's move on to Cleganebowl since we're talking about Sandor here. Basically, we get the scene that we've all been hyped for. We finally get the Mountain and the Hound fighting each other and to the death. They ended up jumping into the fiery flames, Sandor pushes them into the fiery flames at the end of it. I personally didn't care about Cleganebowl ever, so I know, shocking, so shocking coming from me. But you guys can talk about how good it was. Or not.
So again, I compared this to like Lord of the Rings with Sandalf, fighting the Balrog on the staircase and then killing him. I think this fight was probably one of the visually most like fantastic, if I can use that word, as a like fantasy, because like it's on a broken staircase, there's fire all around, there's a dragon above the sky, there's one good knight fighting one bad knight, and it was just great.
Qyburn's brain flew out of his head.
It sure did.
That was the funniest death ever.
I'm going to quote a younger person who really encapsulated this moment for me, which is that the Mountain yeeted Qyburn, which
What the fuck does that mean?
What? Is that like skeet, skeet, skeet or something?
It's some Gen Z shit, man. It's some shit they say.
No, skeet is
yeeted.
This is man relish. What is
yeah,
yeeting?
I know. I don't.
No, it's from a
I don't
vine.
know what yeeted.
I feel it's appropriate here.
Holy crap.
What, you guys haven't seen Logan Paul go, yeah, yeet, or whatever the fuck he does?
Oh, I mean, we know
I'm an
about
adult.
It's,
I do adult stuff.
I've seen the TikTok.
I'm actually too old for this too, but it's the perfect word for this moment.
You're too old for it?
Yeeted.
Yeeted. I don't think anybody said yeeted.
Yeet, yeet, yeet. Oh my
I'm
gosh.
recusing myself.
I forgot
from this
about Qyburn and now all this.
Qyburn, it was literally just like everybody had like such an epic death scene, even fucking Euron, and like then we get Qyburn who like is just literally picked up by the Mountain and thrown against the wall that was not there before, and then thrown in some like rocks, and then he's dead. Like literally, like the crunching sounds were hilarious.
So I guess like the only thing that happens before this battle goes down is the Mountain, who seems to have been like magically controlled by Cersei for several seasons, and Qyburn, I guess, like resists that shit.
Yeah, big time.
Out of nowhere, which I guess I didn't really see that coming.
Brother, I see brother.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like a Frankenstein's monster turning against his maker kind of thing, but it's just too impulsive and quick. It's just like, all right. And then Cersei
He's
very
like, fuck you.
nimbly, tiptoes right past
Scurries off.
Sandor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was fun. I like that the Mountain used his go-to move of gouging people's eyes out. I did think Sandor's skull must be made of tougher stuff than other people's, because his skull was getting knocked all the fuck around. Yeah, no, it was a good time.
Rory McCann did not have a great time shooting this, I don't think.
Yeah. Guys, what do you... So, he got stabbed through the face, and he was still alive. So, what do you guys reckon is the Mountain's, weak spot?
I don't care. I don't.
He doesn't have one. That's the point.
That's fair enough.
I mean, would Dragonglass have helped? That's what I was thinking for a second, but it was like, whatever. He's just a big fuck. You got to deal with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cleganebowl is like, it's just pure fan service, right? There's not a lot there. Like, honestly, Sandor is way more interesting if he stays on the Quiet Isle and never does any of this stuff. Like, that's a better end for his character. So
They did say something in the after the show that had me thinking a little bit about Sandor's, like, how he probably will die. They did say something about him, like, needing to die by fire, like he had to, and I don't know if that's because of a show arc or if that's because of a book thing that they know, but
that's stupid.
Because of what his brother did to
him.
him.
Afraid of fire. Like, that's the only reason. Like, he has to die by fire because the thing that burned him.
Well, like he drug his brother into the fire after his brother put him in the fire as a kid. I mean, I can see that.
Are they implying that he might have survived that, like, 20 stories?
Yeah, I think they just leaked it.
The Lord of Light.
I mean, maybe they just leaked that he's actually alive in the books.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood.
Oh no, I was talking about Sandor, not the Mountain.
Okay.
So I didn't like it.
Yeah, I didn't care for it. I thought it was like, all right, cool, battle's happening, but I'm more interested in what the fuck's going on with Dany, and I only really care about that right now. So.
Right.
Well, Dany's busy burning the Red Keep around their fight.
I'm still mourning Dany.
Atmosphere.
I was happy to have this as a distraction. I needed fucking something while this was going on. I was like, yeah, okay, Cleganebowl, good. Like,
yeah, maybe I just like don't care about like random fight scenes as a distraction, but I'm glad it worked for some people.
Why? The thing for me is like they've hyped literally this conflict for a very long time, and I think that, like, to me anyway, and I don't judge anyone who just like liked it because it was cool. Like, that's fine, but Sandor Clegane has been a character since the first season. We've seen him for a very long time experience a lot of different things. And to me, it was like so distantly removed from the reasons why he wanted to actually kill his brother that I was like, well, why are you doing this? Like, you're literally throwing your life away, right? And like, that Gregor Clegane is literally in a castle that's literally falling down, right? Like, and you literally just told Arya Stark, like, hey, you know what? This thing I'm about to do is really dumb. Don't do it. Like, it to me, it was like,
he
if
doesn't
he had
have
been
anything
fighting,
else to live for, maybe?
Well, if he had been, that's ridiculous, though. Like,
I don't know. Yeah.
The Hound never seemed to me like the type of person in the show who needed a reason to live. He was living because that was the goal.
Think about all the chicken you won't get to eat. I mean, you love chicken.
Is this because sand can't happen now?
No, this is because I think they took a character and didn't do him justice. I just think that, like, there's no, like, if he had been fighting to save someone, if maybe Arya had tried to kill Cersei, and then the Hound was and then the Mountain was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna kill her," and then Cersei ran away, and he was like, "Wait a second, no, I'm gonna stop
That
you
would've
from
been
killing Arya
better.
Stark."
Or
Yeah.
if it was less suicidal, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, it really just like there's no reason for them to do this.
You could just tell the motivations for the scene were purely like, oh, people are gonna think this is so fucking cool.
Right,
Let's have-"
exactly.
No,
Like, that's it.
they literally said that. They let like the shot with like looking out over the sky burning, and like, you know, we could just have the dragon fly by every so often. It looks really cool, guys.
It
They
looked
literally
really
said
cool.
that.
guys.
But like, okay, here's a small, tiny little. Oh, I can't say this. It's an endgame spoiler. I'm not gonna specify
Don't
what it is.
spoil Endgame.
I'm
I
not
don't
spoiling
care.
Endgame. There's no details here.
Deb.
But there's a moment in Endgame that pretty much everybody has looked at and gone, wow, fan service. And it happens to be one that fan service that slants toward female characters. And somehow that's not acceptable. But this is like,
does
yeah.
it involve Black Widow, and does it involve nudity?
No, I thought
there's no
didn't we say that?
nudity in
That was fine.
No,
Like,
it's actually.
I didn't think that was like outrage.
I
or
don't think we
anything.
should debate it because I really don't want to spoil it. I
People
just think
definitely
that-
didn't like
Right.
it.
Yeah.
There were people that didn't like it for sure.
I
Yeah.
okay.
Missed that.
And
I love ScarJo. Love her.
you should really see
And
the movie,
it-
Matt.
It stood my heart for many years. Yeah, I really need to, but weekends have been crazy.
Yeah, I watched it again today.
Well, you know,
I took the wife
just wait
today.
till after the baby's born, then you'll have tons of time.
Yeah, not to bring the baby to a movie theater. Jesus. Hopefully it'll be
A real
on.
little.
All right,
Anyway,
guys.
that's
Do
my
we
rant on
want to
Cleganebowl.
Yeah. What else do we got?
talk about Cersei and Jamie now?
Yes.
So basically, Jamie, after getting slashed in the stomach and the leg by Euron and using only adrenaline to get up to Cersei, I guess, they go to escape and then they get stuck in the it's not the crypt, it's like the dragon lair.
Right,
basement.
Casey,
The
remember
skull
that
room.
he has to walk through the dragon skull thing up to the map room to get Cersei, and then walk back down after being stabbed in, like you said, the leg and the kidney.
Yeah.
That's some good
And all
work.
those skulls were pretty yeeted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Stop!
for sure they were.
I don't know.
They got yeeted pretty good there.
I
Damn it, I hate everything.
when Cersei is I love Cersei, I love Lena Headey. When she's walking around the map room and she just looks lost and confused, like, what am I gonna do? And she looks up and she sees Jamie there. I cried.
That was good.
Yeah.
It was so emotional because it's like he came back for her. Like, he came back for her. It's like
God.
as the world is falling.
But he shouldn't have.
Okay, here's the thing. Like, I hate the Dany thing. I do not like what happens to Jamie. I do not like that this is his arc's conclusion. However, it is consistent with his motivations throughout the show as they've been established.
On the show, yeah.
Yeah, and I have to concede that even though I don't like it, it makes sense. And I also thought, like, it was actually very touching, and I know, yes, like, incest gross, but, like, it was very well acted, and it's like I bought that, like these two people, they are each other's entire world, and it's really twisted, but it's I cried when they died, and I cried when he saw
I had
her.
no sympathy for Cersei here. Maybe I'm heartless, but I think she shares as much of the blame as everyone else for shit that went down this week. She should have just ran away weeks ago.
Yeah, she's the worst.
I think that they successfully. I know what they were going for with this Dany switch was to show, like, all of a sudden Dany becomes the bad guy, and Cersei looks pretty good here in comparison, and you feel actually very sympathetic for her. And I think that they were pretty successful in making you feel bad for Cersei dying and feel bad for Jamie dying, even though that their twisted love is really disgusting and doesn't really match up with Jamie's arc, I don't think. But I felt very moved by the scene.
Their twisted love should be a song name.
It is.
It probably is.
Literally.
I find myself, like, having this argument with myself all the time where it's like, is it really bad or is it just that I don't personally like it. Because, like I said, it's okay for characters to fail their arcs. Like, it's okay that Jamie doesn't come out a good, like, that he doesn't escape the orbit of his sister, that like she's like this well of gravity that he can't get away from. And that's fine. Like, if they can, I don't like it, but
Right.
I thought the way that the place that they died was actually like a really uninteresting location. I think that was like my biggest problem with it. It's like, why did they die in the basement? Like, what does this have to do with their characters? Or
Didn't they used to meet down there though? Like, because it was one of the places where no one went.
No, that was Tyrion and Shay. But I was expecting like Indira Varma to like come out with their daughter and be like, "Hey, motherfuckers, we're all down here."
No, they're dead off screen. Who cares about them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I've never really looked at like the Jamie plotline being like, oh, it's terrible writing. He keeps going back to Cersei. I'm just like, I don't like it. I think it's not good for his character arc compared to what's in the books. But like, it's what they've done with him. It sucks, but you know, it's not like the lazy writing like they've done with so many other characters.
But I mean, we had his story arc, and we had him leave Cersei like what, twice? And the last time was to go north.
His character development so many times on the show, though. Like they would take a step and then go, "Oh no, we need him over here as the hype man. Like we don't have characters in King's Landing. We need him to do this. We need him to do that." Like, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, I think what annoys me about this is more stuff in the last episode that we had where it just seems like Jamie like all of a sudden like switches from, you know, being with Brienne and all of a sudden it's just like, I need to go back to Cersei. And to the point where like, I think it was 50-50 pretty much, where people thought that he was going to kill her and people who thought that he like just couldn't escape his desire for her. And
yeah,
it just like, I think that like aspect of it falls very flat for me, but the scene itself in this episode alone was very good.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, in general, Jamie's plotline has been kind of ridiculous and all over the place over the course of the seasons, and he really hasn't gotten to do anything meaningful for a long time. But as you say, in isolation, and as Katie says, just the idea of Cersei being like a drug that Jamie can't quit, like that's perfectly reasonable to me as a character choice. Like I totally understand that, and I was okay with it, and I thought it was played well in the context of this scene.
it's just not very satisfying, I guess, is like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, you want better for Jamie, and maybe like, I like Cersei, but you know, she deserves a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bummer death. Like, rocks fall and they die.
Yeah. I wish like Cersei, she showed almost real fear and said she wanted to live, which is why I was like, oh, you played the Game of Thrones. But like, I kind of wish there was more of an exchange of like her either feeling sympathy or saying, I don't give a fuck. Like, you know, everything I did for me. And, you know, as strong as she was, like when she was locked up, like after she blew up the Great Sept, like I wanted like one of those moments when her just whimpering just seemed like, I don't know, out of character and, like you said, unsatisfying.
I thought it was actually perfectly in character for her. Like, she's not devoid of emotion. It's just like she hasn't had a mirror to like, she hasn't had anybody to play off or be vulnerable with for a long time. And I thought, like, in the extremis of the moment, that like she's with the person she loves, she's pregnant, like she kind of snaps out of like this depressive stupor she's been in for several seasons of like, no, I actually like, this plan of escape actually sounds really promising.
It's the moment where she's kind of lost control finally. Like, she's been in control for a long time, Cersei, and in this moment she's lost that. So she kind of, you know, all that artifice of like hatred for Jamie just kind of melts away in that moment, and that's all that really matters. So yeah, I like that.
I mean, there are characters who are choosing life, and there are characters who are choosing death, right? And some of them get what they want, like Dany, and some of them, like Cersei, don't. So it's like, it's powerful that Cersei, at that last moment, really does actually, because up to this point, like, all we've really gotten from her about this kid is, like, it's a tool for her to either control Jamie or to control Euron or, you know, whatever. and for her to have a like emotional motherly moment and be like, hey, there's a reason I want to live and this is it and that's what I want to do, and to have that denied her in that last moment is interesting. I think I like it. I don't know. I have complicated feelings because it's
Just
also
to be like, I don't want to die. Like, that's a genuine human moment.
yeah,
That's nice
no,
to
it is.
get.
It's just that Cersei's always been like so fierce. So to like, I'm not saying this as like a total against it. It just is part of my thought process of how I'm seeing it. So like, you know,
Right.
last week we had Brienne break into tears, you know, with Jamie, and now we have Cersei do that, you know. So I don't know. It's not horrible. It's just something I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I get like the whole "I don't want to die" thing, but I feel like there should have been like some kind of addressing how many people that she's had killed. And
Why?
No, they weren't.
Why?
There's too many.
I mean, why does that matter
She doesn't
in
want to
this
die,
scene?
but she deserves to, so I don't care.
Why does it matter? It's because, I like, if she doesn't want to die and she's crying because she doesn't want to die, and then realizes how many other people probably didn't want to die.
Why
based
should she
on-
care about that? Like, it's not
Because
she cares
she's
about her own
completely
life. She doesn't care.
vulnerable right now.
But that's not
Like
her.
right now
That's
is
not
her real reaction to like the simple human emotion of wanting to be alive and not wanting to die.
Well,
And that could open up other things that are uncharacteristic to her, like empathy for other people.
I don't think that was ever happening. I don't think she ever had empathy.
Well, of course
for them.
not. No one can fucking write anything well on the show.
That would be out of character for me, for Cersei to suddenly be like, "Oh, those people I killed."
Yes.
Yeah.
Like she becomes the Grinch, and like her heart goes through sizes. Like that's not Cersei.
Yeah, if
She's
we're,
about-
Her, then her
herself,
crying
that's
about
it.
wanting
Wait.
to live is equally as stupid and not as Cersei.
No,
No,
everybody wants to live. Like, most people.
except
want to
Sandra
live.
Clegane.
Yeah.
No, but I
I
think
mean, the
if we're
siege of King's
gonna
Landing,
No.
she was drinking it away.
Michal,
if we're gonna feel sympathy for Cersei Lannister, it's gonna be on her own terms, and I think that this is close enough to her own terms to work well. Like I don't think her having remorse remorse is not a thing for Cersei. Like let's just get real, it's not. So that would not have worked for me.
Yeah, but either is self-pity. That's why I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, she
Alright.
does feel bad for herself. She clearly does. Like that when she's watching the dragon get closer and closer, and like slowly realizing, like slowly convincing her or
She starts
stopping to
crying.
convince herself. Yeah.
all right. Do we have any other moments that we want to discuss other than maybe Arya at the end?
Other than Arya getting Vicky killed. Like,
Oh yeah.
Riding
She-
off on Shadowfax.
got a
Vicky was
unicorn.
dead no matter what. It wasn't Arya's,
she took them out of the tower.
which I think collapses probably at that moment too. I don't know.
I
It was
know
silly.
that they're using like a random, slightly more fleshed out extra to be a way to make this hurt more for us, and I didn't appreciate it. I don't think.
I mean, because it's
Oh,
emotional
the
and
bells
manipulative.
Yeah.
Is the bells thing from somewhere? Like, I don't remember that, like, from the show or the books, or they, like, explained it to us this episode, so we knew about it, because they mentioned it, like, 100 times, but, like, is that a thing? Like, oh, you ring the bells, and that's the people saying we're...
Well,
Well,
it's only been
we surrender?
referenced for
John
death.
Con.
Yeah, Death of the King.
Yeah.
And John Connington, who's obsessed with
The ringing of
bells.
the bells.
Battle of the Bells. Yeah.
Yeah.
But typically the bells means
Yeah.
like someone's attacking or someone's approaching and like kind of all hands on deck.
Just to go back for a sec, something did occur to me about the reason. I mean, probably the reason why they killed Cersei and Jamie in the crypt was because, or in the basement, is because it was easy enough to do. But I feel like, especially in the early seasons, like there was a lot of more illicit activity happening down there, and like I could imagine that they would meet down there for trysts, and you know, like that's where Arya hears Illyrio and
Yeah,
Varys.
I could have sworn that in the book they did.
No, it's Tyrion and Shay, and nothing
Yeah,
is
they do it
lit
down
up
there
like
too.
it was
I don't
with,
think they
like,
have an
1,000
exclusive
torches.
rent on the place.
That's where people go to smoke
It's like
weed.
make out point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about like the dumb Sandor must die by fire. It's at least connected with something with his character. The crypts in like a dusty corner, it doesn't evoke anything for me. It doesn't like they're not utilizing their scene, like their location very well for that death.
You know what it invoked for me is that Rey from The Last Jedi needed to be there to lift all the rocks and bricks.
That would have helped. That would have helped a lot.
I also cried during that scene.
I do.
When she
Katie is a sap.
when she sees Finnegan and they hug,
I
like
know.
I don't give a shit about Star Wars.
All right.
Well, okay. One thing though, I do wonder if like there's going to be any like awareness of these deaths. Like, are people going to find the bodies next week, or is it just going to be like, well, I don't know where Jaime and Cersei are. They're probably dead.
Well, I think the idea is that Tyrion's going to get in some shit because he tipped them off or something, and
They'll
Danny
find
doesn't
a
get to-
golden hand, and that's it.
I
Yeah.
mean, they might actually. Yeah.
I swear to God,
I mean,
it'll
Dany
be.
should have just burned Tyrion this episode.
I think she might next episode. Like either Jon or Tyrion is getting fed to the dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dany burns Tyrion and Jon steps in front of it, and he's fireproof for all to see.
Oh fuck!
Oh, this
That's the snow.
Oh, I
If
love
that
this
happens, I
show.
will never watch another episode of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I'll be done with the
Dude,
show
that's
after next week.
What are we gonna complain about?
Aw.
This is over.
Well, the rest of us are going to complain about Star Wars. I don't know about you, Katie.
Very true.
Lord of the Rings is coming out on Amazon. Well, we got stuff to complain about.
The hatred.
I hear that Tolkien movie's not very good.
The shared internet hatred for Ryan Johnson and D&D, like there's so much internet hate there, just festering,
I
waiting
don't
to
hate
come out.
Ryan Johnson.
I don't either, but a lot of people do.
All right, let's close out the show first.
But I do want to talk about Sansa if we're not going to talk about Arya.
Okay, I mean, I was just gonna bring up Arya, but yes, let's talk about like what we think will be happening like after this. I mean, in this next episode.
Well, Dany's going to
with
fly
Sansa.
north and possibly burn Sansa alive. And I'm
What?
mostly saying this because I don't want it to happen. So if I say it, maybe it won't happen.
How
Michal,
long is the
don't
next
say it.
episode?
Think about this long.
It's 80 minutes.
50 minutes?
Sorry, 80.
80 minutes.
Oh, that's different.
Okay. I mean, it is possible that Sansa could. There's still time, Michal. There's still time for her to die terribly, I
Well,
guess.
I think something has to happen in Winterfell because I think like I mean she like Dany's half obsessed with Sansa as it is. She mentions her like twice in this episode, and she has a line to Jon like, "Oh well, now Sansa knows what happens to people who like break my trust or whatever." And I don't think in this mood that she's in, she's gonna much be like, yeah, let's let bygones be bygones. I understand why you told. It's fine.
And then Bran wargs into the dragon, and the dragon flies into the sea.
Yeah, it's I
Or
really,
the dragon just chokes on Tyrion.
other than like the immediate fallout of with Jon and Tyrion, I just don't have. I have no estimation of what the hell is going to happen next episode.
Yeah.
It could like be something super crazy, like, and then the camera pans out and all this has been taking place inside George R. R. Martin's eye, and he's like sitting at his desk.
Like St. Elsewhere?
Yeah.
Or St. Elmo's Fire?
No,
when-
I hope they do something real dumb right at the end.
Yeah, I think the real dumb thing might be like her and Grey Worm fly back across the sea to rule Marine.
With Dario.
Yeah.
Braun has to show up again, guys. I'm telling
Yeah.
you.
God
fuck
damn it.
Ron.
No, I think
He's
that
probably already moved into High Garden. No one's there.
Yeah.
I think that either Arya, I mean, everything I've thought has been wrong. So,
Yeah.
everything.
Same.
But I feel like, I mean, okay, I'll put it this way. A theory on the internet is that Arya or Jon will kill Dany.
Yes.
You would think Arya would have had enough of this shit already. But apparently not.
It has to be. She has to kill fire and she has to kill ice. For some reason.
So I wanted to bring up this. Basically, the last scene in this episode is Arya finding a random horse and riding off into the distance. So I wanted to, this thing that's going around with Arya being the, there's a lot of foreshadowing that she was going to kill a queen, aka Queen Cersei, but now that Cersei's dead, a lot of people think that that's going to be Dany. And a lot of people with this scene in particular are drawing parallels to a biblical reference in Revelations. And I just want to read the quote from Revelations.
Jesus Christ.
All right. So the quote goes as, "When the Lamb broke the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, 'Come.' I looked and behold an ashen horse, and he who sat on it had the name Death, and Hades was following with him. Authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword and with famine and with pestilence, and by the wild beasts of the earth." So,
yeah, I think Death is the only named horseman of the apocalypse, and that's also written by a Greek dude, like 400 years after Jesus' birth, if Jesus existed. The
So
end.
what's the theory?
Named.
So the theory is that
Pestilence,
this
war.
horse is symbolizing death, and
Symbolizing?
yeah, because it's a horse.
Arya's horse.
It's like the pale mare.
Yeah, Arya is basically like symbolizing death in that she still has one death to carry out.
Okay.
I could see it.
I feel like people should stop theorizing about this show after all the shit that people have been like,
Yeah.
what if Drogon goes and gets baby dragons and comes back
Oh,
based on a
that
shot
annoyed
of
me so
Euron
much.
staring at the sky? Like, what is that theory?
And the opening credits. Hey guys, did you know that Night King is alive and he has a dragon
And he's
in
Bran.
the Summer Islands? Like, whatever.
Have y'all ever seen the interview with D&D where they say that like theme is for 8th grade book reports? We don't care about theme. That's all I think about now. Like,
Wait a minute, what?
That annoys me so much.
I can't watch them talking anymore.
I
actually can't.
there's so many, like every single
Wait, say
English
that
course
again?
I've taken is about themes.
they said once that like theme, like when they're in their writing process, they don't think about theme because quote theme is for 8th grade book reports. And it's like, you actually need to think about themes when you're writing so that character arcs can land with a punch, that things can come together cohesively.
They're like, no, we do punch list. We don't stop writing until everything that we hit somehow, we get to that.
I'm sure making this show was very, very difficult. They were given a very hard task of first like adapting the series and then having to go it alone. Every now and then I feel a pang of sympathy for them, and then I just don't anymore because
You know what's a hard task is getting paid dick and being expected, having so much expected of you.
sure. Like,
What makes that hard task easier if you're getting paid boatloads of money and you produce a product that the entire world loves, even though we're bitching and complaining about it.
sure, that's where my sympathy runs out because I'm sure these two guys are huge douchebags in real life.
Yeah.
Let's not forget what they did to earn this job in the first place, namely writing X-Men Origins Wolverine, the worst of the X-Men franchise, and a franchise that's had some pretty bad movies.
Yeah, I mean, it did introduce, Deadpool.
Well, I think Benioff did that
Randall.
anyway.
Oh.
But
Michal?
Yeah, I have interesting. I liked them for a long time because for a long time they were the people who had read these books and really seen their potential as mass entertainment, and not just a niche story that people talked about on forums. Obviously, like, that's changed a lot, but I do think that they, they didn't start by not reading the books. Like, they did read the books. Like, I remember being frustrated back in the days when I was a defender of the books, of the show, when a podcast of Ice and Fire would say that, like, oh, well, they didn't do this. And I'm like, guys, but they know what's, like, this is, like, published material already. They know that stuff is happening. I'm sure they either have a plan or whatever. So it's weird because I think we kind of both owe them, like, a crazy wild debt, even just as fans of genre. And, like, nothing since Lord of the Rings has normalized fantasy to this degree, like high real fantasy. At the same time, there's obviously people like, oh, that's Game of Thrones. Like, what does Ian McShane say? It's like dragons and tits, and, like, it's reducing the genre the way it's been reduced for a very long time. So I don't know. I have complicated feelings toward them and their art. I would rather them not be near Star Wars, personally. But as a general, like, I think as time goes by, we have to be like, look, they saw something in this, and they did go to HBO, which was making The Sopranos and was making Boardwalk Empire and was making not fantasy shows at all. And they were like, here's this crazy, crazy show. It was made to be impossible to film, and we think we can make something out of it. And they did.
But I feel like...
I think that's important to put in perspective, that Game of Thrones could have been a lot worse. It could have been, like you say, one of these
the original pilot.
General fantasy things that was just thrown on the trash bin and never achieved this level of success.
Mm-hmm.
It is important to remember that as we go in on these guys for 2 hours. But yeah, I think
2.5.
2.5 hours.
Well, I mean, the one thing is, like, I think we can all say, like, we're giving Dave and Dan a hard time, but I don't think Dave and Dan deserve death threats that they're getting on Twitter right now or anything like that.
Well, no one deserves that because of a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, George R. R. Martin doesn't deserve them. These guys don't deserve them. Most people don't deserve them. So
Cersei probably deserved them.
Fictional characters, death threats, all you want, but
yeah, they're not real. As Katie said too, they kind of got fucked over here, like not having the source material and expecting that and having to do it on their own sucks.
But they knew that, they've known for 3 or 4 seasons that they weren't getting at least another book.
Well, I'm sure they knew. That doesn't change the circumstance, though.
They probably expected George R. R. Martin to stay more involved.
They absolutely did. Yeah, I think that.
Yeah,
I think there must be.
He cut off once they diverged so badly, and then
which is tough because when they were making the initial phases of the show, I'm sure they like George had every reason to expect that there was going to be more published material. Like, this is not a precedented thing. It's not like this doesn't happen that books stop, as they're being adapted. So
and George wrote like an episode a season for the first 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 3 or 4. But yeah. I feel like they. I don't know. I feel like that for the meat of this entire series, it's been mostly like political intrigue. There hasn't been that much magic until almost after the source material ran out, and then all of a sudden it's like lots of dragons, the White Walker. Like, there's a lot of more fantastic elements to the series where they just haven't really been able, like. So, the people interactions, they still fuck up.
But don't you think the books are going in that direction? I mean, the books, like, Martin has said that famous thing about making people read fantasy, like putting a frog in water and turning up the heat slowly.
Yeah, so obviously I think the books are doing that. I don't know yet because we don't have any more books. So I would assume that they would be more dragon-centric and more magic-centric with the, Makoro and the Red Priestesses. And, Jon's still dead, guys.
Right.
So it's going to have to be some real magic going on if we're going to see him again. But we just don't know yet.
Are you upset with the way they've handled like the magical elements in the show? Is that what you're saying? I mean, there's a lot of balls to juggle there, but I think they've done okay with it. I think that they probably swept a lot of it to the side more than George will, but...
Basically, I think they've done a really bad job of a lot of this, and I think that they've done stuff badly that they didn't have to do badly if they had laid groundwork and developed characters in directions that could have been fulfilled better. For example, their 3-year plan to have Sansa married to Ramsay, and their 4-year plan to have Arya kill the Night King, and all of this stuff that they're like, oh yeah, we thought this forever. There's a lot of bad stuff in the show, and there's a lot of bad stuff that is adapted poorly. I just think that thinking realistically as a trying to be as objective as possible, I'm sure that George is not the easiest person to work with either. I'm sure that making a television show these guys have aged more than presidents, if you look at the pictures of them, each successive season of them doing this commentary is more yeah, Jon Snow. There's one from a couple years ago of David Benioff sitting on a Beyond the Wall set or something, and just it's snowing all over him, and he looks literally dead. And that was several seasons ago. So I guess I'm just saying that angry as I am at a lot of it, and mixed as I am about whether or not it was all worth it in the end, I know this is a conversation for next week, but still, I actually feel like this week is a better time to have it because I think next week's going to be just all emotion all the time. But whatever, I think that we have to have a certain amount of respect. And obviously, we don't know yet, right? We don't know what the Thrones effect is. We don't know if there are going to be more shows, if they're going to work. It remains to be seen, but whatever. Things are as they are.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
back to our regularly scheduled bitching.
Yeah.
Credit where credit is due. Yeah.
Yeah. If you've listened to the whole thing, thanks for listening. You can find us on the Podcast of Ice and Fire forums, as well as YouTube, iTunes. I'm sure you're probably listening to this from one of those. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the dating websites, of course. And if you want to talk to us, come talk to us on the forums. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys. Those clips, though, are so, I'm sure everybody has seen these clips of Emilia Clarke saying, best season ever, and, John or Kit Harington's answering in one word, how would you describe the season finale? And he says disappointing. What the fuck?
Have you seen the clip of Peter Dinklage looking like he has a gun pointed at his head?
That is my favorite one.
When he just says, Dave and Dan are the best TV writers living now. And he
That's
just
It's like when you watch a celebrity doing a press junket for a movie that's absolute trash, that's the best acting that comes out of those movies. I just feel there's also that video that came out this week of them all learning about Varys being a Merling, the theory. And just watching the cast hear about that theory is amazing.
Yes, that's why he took off the rings. The rings were his Melisandre ruby. So he actually, when the fire came down, he just shrank Jedi style. All his clothes collapsed, and he flopped into the sea like a big walrus.
You know the fucked up thing? I actually thought that. I actually had that thought.
Yeah, became one with the Force.
Slide aside. What happens if an actor bad talks the show that they're on? Can they get sued for that? Is that part of their contract that they can't?
Know.
Yeah,
we'll find out with Constance Wu, right?
Yeah, right.
But at least I'm constantly picturing at this point like Richard Madden at home with popcorn, watching it, being like, "Oh, thank God, I only got through 3 seasons before this shit happened."
Like a lot of the contracts are for a certain period of time, where like they can't like disparage or reveal things. Sometimes there's non-disclosures, which is why you'll see a lot of actors like several years later will be like, "Oh yeah, that movie was terrible. That was shit that I worked on." Like,
yeah,
and they can
Tom
talk about
Holland
it
apparently
openly.
is really bad about spoilers, so they had to like give him like only the pages of his script to Avengers Endgame. Because
I'm about to say, I'm sure that stuff is written. Yeah, all that type of stuff is like written in. I just don't know how much action they actually would take on it. You know, I mean, because that happened with the Avengers. You know, it happened with the Avengers with them spoiling stuff here and there.
Right.
But I don't think anything really came of it. It's just like a deterrent. But
Just waiting for
Yeah, they don't want to, like, pub.
Here's
not
waiting
like-
for. Yeah, fuck it.
All right, I think let's move back towards Game of Thrones now.
It's not like they
the
need
mystery
more
of the
money
joke
to
will just
sue
haunt
them.
us, Paul.
I was just gonna say, here's waiting for 40 years on from now with the Game of Thrones cast reveals all.
Oh, I think they'll all have very positive memories of this.
Yeah, while they're sitting on their piles of money.
Yes, exactly. It made them famous
Yeah.
millionaires. I don't think they're gonna...
smoking cigars of roll
HBO
up
is already
hundreds.
promoting their documentary at the end of the month about making the show. So
God.
Oh yeah,
Really?
that's right.
Who do you guys think will be the most successful actor to come from Game of Thrones, like in the long term?
Sophia
Yeah,
Turner.
Sophie Turner's done very well for
it's
herself.
gonna be-
She's done well. She's done very well for herself. I don't know. She's so good on Game of Thrones, and then like I watched the trailers for Dark Phoenix, and I'm like,
right.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
see this
It's
movie
X-Men,
anyway.
though.
But
it's
like,
never expected to be good.
That's
yeah.
not her fault.
Hey.
I mean, it's the same situation. She's just going into a story with bad writing involved.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, Maisie Williams was in a Marvel movie that they apparently are not going to release now. So
Jesus.
I mean, I really, they need to release that. And like Richard Madden's doing well for himself, and he's rumored to get to being cast in the Eternals right now. So
I really enjoyed him in Bodyguard.
yeah,
I still have to
Bodyguard
see
was a
that.
hit.
It was good.
Kit Harington was in that Pompeii movie where he got turned
That
into
was
a
not good.
statue.
That was
I
not
think
good
he's
at all.
actually made some jokes about that.
Yeah, he's already disparaged that movie. He's hit that point where he can make fun of it.
Yeah,
He was
make
in
fun of it as well.
Gunpowder, which was like a colonial time, the gunpowder plot. Yeah,
Yeah,
that wasn't bad.
Hmm.
It wasn't great.
Yeah.
right. I mean, you're not going to do better than V for Vendetta, so why even try?
It's tough. Like he
So the-
is, I think, easy to typecast. He's easier to typecast than I think Sophie and Maisie are.
That's true. I agree.
Yeah,
I mean, Peter Dinklage already has like a fairly good career like before this.
He's been in Oscar-nominated films. He's fine.
Yeah.
He was an elf.
He was
That's
an
a
elf.
win.
Yeah, he's an elf.
He was a station agent.
Oh. Station agent. That's right.
Yeah, and Lena Headey and Nikolai have already like
Oh,
done
yeah.
stuff before this too. So you know,
Yeah, 300 man, Lena Headey. My
I
first
hope-
experience with it.
I hope
very
some of the
nice.
smaller
Like-
actors, like I really hope that Natalie Emmanuel and the guy who plays Grey Worm, like I think they're really good. I would definitely like to
Yeah,
see them in
She's
more.
playing. I think isn't she like doing a? I forget what movie. It's not Ophelia. It's something else that she's coming up with.
Ophelia is
Daisy
Rey
Ridley.
from Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she's been on like several BBC things.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
all
they'll all
have.
go
Yeah,
back
she's done a lot of
to doing
British
all those
stuff over
miniseries
there.
on the BBC.
On the BBC.
You know who's probably gonna like make out real well from this is Lyanna Mormont.
Yeah.
Like she came out of
maybe.
nowhere and apparently impressed
Oh,
everyone.
right.
Well, she's in the Judy Garland movie that they're making with Renee Zellweger. She plays
Oh.
Really?
her daughter. Yeah.
God, I can't imagine anything I want to watch less than a.
Who
Judy
does she
Garland
murder in that movie?
with Renee.
Some musical numbers? I don't know.
plus there's that crazy video of her breakdancing like a champ.
Apparently,
What?
that's not actually her. Sorry to ruin that.
Oh,
That's
No,
what I saw. I don't know the
Fakes.
internet. Who knows with the internet? But yeah, I saw it was fake.
Okay.
All right, guys. Do we want to
Where-
talk
where
about
are we?
this battle now?
Oh,
Wait,
yeah.
we have 25 more
Yeah.
actors to go through to predict their careers.
Sorry, that should be a whole nother podcast. My bad. Sorry.
Where are they now? Speculative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Varys.